that it's 7:09 p.m. on November 6, 2024. I'll call the Board of Health meeting to order. And since it's a virtual meeting, first thing we'll do is the board will announce their presence. So Daryl Beardsley present.
Steve Constantine present.
Julie Dreyfus present.
Diana Hook present.
Rebecca Honeywell present.
Okay. Let's see.
We have
So
we have a not reasonably anticipated item to add to the agenda tonight.
Okay, great.
Can I interject that, Daryl? Which
Yeah,
is the
absolutely.
ratification of appointment of Paul Sanier to serve as the board's agent for witness soil testing at 0 Washington Street. Do I have an motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, by roll
Any
call.
other discussion? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, any other discussion?
Is this the appropriate time to ask a question, or is it better after we've amended the agenda?
It has to be amended to the agenda before we can have any substance, yeah.
No other further matter from my perspective.
Steve, do you want to kick us off?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. Okay. Let's see. So we have a number of items, but there are a couple of quick ones. So how about if we go to the Board of Health Administrator resignation topic?
I'll take this one, Daryl.
Yeah.
All right, so the board's not going to be taking public comment for this agenda item. On October 29th, 2024, the town clerk received a resignation letter from Jessica Edwards, Board of Health Administrator. This is the formal filing mechanism for such a letter. The letter submitted listed 2 possible effective dates, November 11th, 2024, or effective immediately. The guidance we have received recommends we accept November 11th. So do I have a motion to accept November 11th, 2024 as the effective date for the resignation of Jessica Edwards from the position of the Board of Health Administrator?
So moved.
May we have some discussion about this?
We have to have a motion in a second.
Yes, motion and second. So I seconded, Diana did move the motion. I would like to say that this was a voluntary resignation, and I see no reason to not honor the request of Jessica Edwards.
I would like to have discussion before we vote, because it's unclear to me why. I think that the board deserves to know why there is an immediate resignation as opposed to a period of time. I don't know what the standard procedure would be.
She had asked for the 11th. And that's what we're voting on.
Yes, I understand what we're voting on, but I feel I understand, but I feel that there should be some discussion of the board before we vote on a decision of when the last date should be. That doesn't make any sense to me why I would make that vote without information.
So we have
why you pick one date versus another.
I'll go back then, Rebecca. We have guidance that we should accept what is the primary intention, which is November 11th.
The primary intention of the
in the letter
of the town or of the
of Miss Edwards in her letter.
And that was immediate versus 3 weeks. What would have been the date of 3 weeks?
November 11th.
I see, okay. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
Regarding the matter or regarding the vote?
We have a motion and a second. We are discussing the motion only.
Okay.
Hearing no further.
Constantine, aye.
Thank you, Sue. Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell abstain.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. Okay, I think the other item, Julie, would you also like to introduce the discussion of payroll procedures?
Sure.
Can I make a request that the Board of Health have an executive session at our next meeting to discuss the administrator, because there's a probationary period of 6 months. The board, I don't know whose job it is. I'd be very interested for future reference for the board to understand the procedure of not only the selection process, which we went through before, but the board was not, most of the board, the entire board wasn't involved until the end of the process. And the second part of this, which is right now we have a resignation, which implies, or at least alludes to, some internal operational problems. The entire board deserves to know what those are. If we are elected members of the board, I feel that it's appropriate for us to have an executive session to be informed of these issues so that we can address them moving forward. So we have 2 issues that I propose that the entire board be involved with, which is number 1, the procedure that should be followed for a replacement. And what is the process for the Board of Health? Whose responsibility is it to manage that probationary period? Should the board be involved or informed about meetings? Were there points of discussion? Was the board informed at any time during that period? I don't remember the board having been included in any conversations, and it feels to me like we should be involved. I'm sure that there's not a violation of open meeting law, but I'm just saying that I think it would just be good practice for the board to be aware if there's an issue that gets to the point of a highly trained, you were very enthusiastic about this candidate when you hired her, and we agreed with you and we believe in you. And so I'm interested, I'm speaking for myself, to know how it got to a resignation. And that's kind of something I feel like the board should be informed. And I would love to learn what the proper procedure is. And if it's true that there are issues, I think we should, as a board and for the benefit of the town, we should at the very least be informed so we can maybe address some of these issues going forward.
So Rebecca, we can add that to the agenda. You have 2 points, neither of which I believe qualify for executive session.
Okay. I don't know what the qualifications are for executive
We can
sessions.
double check on that.
Yeah, it'd be
double check on that. I would not mind double checking that.
okay. That would be great. Thanks.
But it's not on the agenda tonight. It would have to be added
Right.
to the agenda in the future.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to, if there are personnel issues, then I think it would be respectful to have an executive session. But aside from any particular personnel issues, I think it's good as a board to have a procedure that we follow. And maybe there is a procedure that's already in place, but I would appreciate having that ability to be involved in the discussion and aware of things.
Okay. Well, when we do the agenda update, we'll make sure we list that down.
Great, thank you.
So moving on to this kind of follows from these 2 things are connected. So discussion.
Julie, I have my hand raised.
But we're not taking public comment on that issue, Bob. We are taking
You're
public
not
comment.
taking public comment on the issue of a resignation of someone
That's correct.
who you're completely, at the beginning of this meeting, mischaracterizing what has happened. And I would like to simply read a paragraph from
Nope.
the resignation letter, which is a public record. And I'd like to
That's
just
fine.
simply
And
read
this is
one.
not the place. You're not being recognized to speak on this issue tonight, Bob.
You know, there is a First Amendment, Julie. And the SJC has recently ruled that for you to shut off people because you don't like what they're going to say is highly inappropriate under the First Amendment and under the SJC ruling. I would like to simply read one paragraph to the assembled here tonight from the resignation letter. Her resignation is on the agenda, and I'd like to read that if I could. It's germane to the point that Rebecca just raised.
This
And
is
I
out
think
of
the
the
public
scope
should,
of on the agenda. The
I'm
agenda
sorry?
is the agenda is the effective date. Anything that you might be discussing right
the
now
letter
is related to
has
what
the
Rebecca
effective date.
said, and that is what we said could be on.
Why are you
the
sweeping
agenda.
this under the rug? This is a
Because
big
this is
deal.
not
What's
on the
happened here.
agenda. It's on the, if we just said we'd put it on the agenda for the next meeting, this agenda is explicit in the effective date. It is a violation of open meeting law to discuss issues outside of what is the listed
Her
agenda.
resignation is an agenda item. I would simply like to read the agenda, one paragraph from the resignation letter, and it's germane to what you allowed Rebecca Hunnewell just now to speak about.
Because Rebecca is a member of this board.
It doesn't matter
We're
who's a member of the board.
public, and the board, it was in the discussion period. And members of the board
Okay.
are allowed to
So are
have.
you not going to allow me to read
As
this
a member
paragraph?
of the public, you're
Are
not
you-
being acknowledged
Are
to
you going
speak
to
on this
deny
issue.
me the ability to read the simple
Yes.
paragraph from the
And I am
resignation letter?
inviting you to join the meeting when this is on the agenda.
No,
And I agree with what Julie is saying.
I think you're wrong because
It
you
was-
mischaracterized
No, it was specified.
what has
that
happened,
this is
and
the
you're not willing
discussion
to
of
let the
the
public know
effective
what's
date.
going on here. This is a big deal. Don't sweep it under the rug. Let folks know what's
We are
going on.
not trying to sweep it under the rug. We are trying to
It
get
sounds an awful lot
this
like you're
first thing
mischaracterizing what
resolved.
has happened.
Her effective meeting date has been discussed and voted on. That is the agenda. We're going to move on to discussion of payroll procedures. So in the absence of a department administrator, which we now have, the board needs to authorize a member of the board to sign off on staff payroll until the administrator position is filled, excuse me. Is there any questions on the board about, before I can call for a motion. We need to have someone to authorize, that we authorize to sign off on payroll.
And I will note that until recently, it has been the chair, and then it was shifted. So this is something that has historically been done by the chair for a long time,
So I would suggest that
predating me.
it seems appropriate that it be the chair, unless there's someone else who's really dying to do it.
Having done it before, you know what needs to be done. That sounds efficient to me.
Okay.
I think it would be appropriate for the chair to do it now, but I also think that when we have an administrator, it probably is appropriate for the administrator to do it.
That's
But
exactly.
we have an administrator, but that's, a separate issue.
So maybe it might be helpful then if I make the motion because it will include that language. So can I have a motion to authorize Chair Daryl Beardsley to act on behalf of the board in signing off on staff payroll in the absence of a Board of Health administrator?
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion.
Are you also not taking public comment on this topic as well?
I did not say that.
Okay, I have my hand raised, so.
We're gonna have discussion amongst the board and then we will acknowledge public comment.
Yeah. This was the region or I know? Okay.
Can you please mute yourself?
There's no specific feedback.
Thank you. And so implicit in that motion, Rebecca, is that this would be until we have an administrator. And then
Yeah,
the administrator, that is the policy and procedure of the town, is that the
Mhm.
department heads do the sign off. And so we just have to, we need to fill in until then.
Oh, yeah, that's fine with me. That was my only comment. But of course, I don't know what the normal procedure is of other departments, so.
That's the policy and procedure for all of town hall, all of the town.
Thank you.
Bob,
So I'm interested to know whether there were any concerns expressed by the administrator who was most recently signing off on these payroll cards that now it sounds like you're going to vote to have Daryl take over. Did she have any concerns about these, the accountability of time cards in the Board of Health?
that is not in the scope of what we are discussing.
Sure it is. We're talking about signing off on time cards. And
No,
I'm
we're
asking
authorized.
if there was any concern with the last person who was signing the time cards, because I think that's a big deal for the town. As you know, I did a lot of research a number of years ago on timekeeping. The Inspector General wrote a very long letter about it, and it appears that this issue has now resurfaced. And I don't think it's appropriate to ignore that. And that's what this discussion is about. It's about signing time cards. And I'm asking, were there any concerns about the signing of time cards in recent months?
The motion is to authorize a member of the board to fill in for this role in the absence of an administrator. What you're asking is outside of the scope of what is on our agenda. If we were to address this topic, it is a violation of open meeting law.
I disagree with that.
Is there any further discussion amongst the board? If not, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. We have 3 minutes before the variance hearing. Do we think
Should we
should
do the amended motion, or I'm not sure if we have 3 minutes? If that's a 3-minute activity.
Yeah, that might not be. We could do the installer permit application renewal. Mark, if you're on.
Yes, I am here. Hi, everyone.
Okay.
Yes, and
Good.
so,
Do you have any comments on this?
no, this company, Holliston Sewer Service, has been involved with the town and licensed for many years, and their work is fine. And so I recommend approval of this installer's permit. He mostly does distribution boxes, but, but I would still recommend approval of the installer's permit as requested.
Okay, so the motion could be approval of the installer permit renewal for Holliston Sewer Service conditional to pre-construction conference.
Perfect. Yes, I would agree with that. Thank you.
So moved.
Would anyone like to move that?
So moved.
Would you, I'm sorry, would you mind repeating exactly what we're voting on?
Under other
Installer.
business, yes, installer permit,
It's the installer.
application renewal for Holliston Sewer Service, conditional to pre-construction conference.
Thank you, thank you.
Seconded,
Discussion. Hearing none.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Rebecca, would
Okay.
you mind putting, unless you have something to add to that, would you mind putting your hand down? It just makes it hard.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm very
for us
sorry.
to
I
see. That's just
I
make.
didn't, yeah, no. In this field, I can't see that my hand is still raised. I apologize. Thank you for pointing that out.
I know we have 1 minute. I'm going to just stop sharing to pull up the files for the hearing.
Just to let you know, I am connected now, so I
Do you
can,
want to share?
I can share if you'd like to open it, go over the green card status, and I will
Sure.
get that ready.
So I have confirmation from our assistant administrator that all of the green cards have been received. And seeing as it is now 7:30, I am opening the variance hearing for 169 Maple Street. And I see that we have the engineer, Eric Dickinson, on hand, and I believe we also have the property owner, Mr. Demler, on hand.
Hi, good evening. This is
Hi.
Eric Dickinson with Civilized Solutions. On
Let's do-
behalf of the, can you hear me?
Yep, no, I was gonna say,
Okay.
before you review it, you can
Okay.
absolutely introduce, just let Daryl get it up so we can also see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I
Are
can
you
see it.
seeing it yet?
Yep, I got it. Thank you. So like I said, it's Eric Dickinson with Civilized Solutions on behalf of the owner, Roger Demler and Sarah. I see they're both on. Their property is 169 Maple Street. It's located at the corner of Maple and Pleasant. You might recall a couple weeks ago, I was in front of you for One Pleasant, and that one is currently wrapping up. Anyway, this is an existing 3-bedroom, single-family home. The existing septic system is in the front yard, kind of underneath the tank, the proposed tank right in there. And then there's a pit. You can see the circle out in the yard there, in this front yard. Yep, right there. It was determined during the soil testing, and I don't know if there was also a Title V by Harry that it is in the groundwater and it is in failure, there's very high groundwater on Maple Street. I think during the testing we had it at 30 inches was the average. There's an existing well behind the house. It's about 30 feet off the back, the on-site well. And then there's 2 abutting wells. The first one Pleasant, right there. And then I don't know if you can scroll up. There's 5 Pleasant. No, for a little further up, you can't see it on the screen, I don't think. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. So those were the real constraints. The soil testing came back as expected. It was the perk was pretty good. It was 7 minutes per inch, but the high groundwater. The applicant would like to add a bedroom. There's a room in the top floor of the top level where it's kind of an attic space that could be converted to a bedroom. It's a 3-bedroom, 5-room home now. The system is going to be its standard trench system, 2 stone trenches with reserve area. Pump system mounted. The only variances, there are no variances to Title V, only to the local regulations. The first being 4 feet to groundwater instead of the 5 feet, just to limit the height of the system and the tree clearing and the walls. There is a wall right now along the side of the property there, side of the home, between the system and the home. The other variance is 5 feet to groundwater, which very common, very hard to find in Sherborn. Like I said, we saw groundwater within 30 inches in every test pit. And the last one is the offsets to the wells. Every one of the wells is downhill. The perk rate was 7 minutes per inch, so it's 150 feet. If you scroll to the top, I created a table. So good. Yeah, right on the top there. So 169 Maple is the applicant. Sherborn requirement is 150. That one's that's right at 100 feet. So it's not Sherborn compliant, but it is Title V compliant. Then there's 1 Pleasant Street, also 150. That one is 128.1 to the reserve area. Again, not Sherborn compliant, but Title V. Then the last one is 5 Pleasant downhill, also 150, and that one is 124 feet to the from the system to the well. that is about all I have. The right of the property on the top, what would it be, the western corner? Yeah, there is a wetland system, and I think that extends down into the woods and the along there with the what would it be, the eastern or the western property line, sorry. Where you have your cursor, that's a pretty heavily wooded area as well. So and it's close to the well, so that's why I chose where I did. That's about all I have. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you say that the wells are downhill of their own septic system, of his own septic system?
Yeah, they're all downhill of the proposed septic system. Yeah.
So it's concerning to me, for the person who lives there. Is there any way with any kind of technology of having it meet our local regs? Because if it's true that that his wells are downhill of his septic, and even though maybe it meets Title V, it doesn't apply. It should go to the local regs if there's no public water, if there's no water coming from another source, which unfortunately he doesn't have, and his wells are downhill. So that means that his own well is going to get contaminated. And I don't know how we protect him from that risk. Is there any way that it could meet the regs with any kind of technology? I'm just trying to learn.
I think it'd be difficult because if you added another 50 feet to that circle there, that's from like say 5 Pleasant, the radius, it'd be about in the middle of the system, you know, or roughly right in there. Then given the size of the system, we'd be very close to his well. Really, maybe 25 feet, but yeah. The same would be true with 1 Pleasant.
Yeah, and it's a failed system, so he has no option. Or
Correct. I mean, it's an improvement over what's there now. Even though we're adding a bedroom, it's still a lot. It still protects the groundwater and the wells, I believe, more than, you know, what's happening now. If he was just to keep it as it is.
If he's is there a way to improve the septic system so that it makes it safer for him?
It's meeting, the only way it would be if you would to, you know, it'd be another foot, like, so you'd have a greater separation, you'd meet the Sherborn requirement, you know, you'd have 5 foot separation instead of 4. But like I said, it'd be an incredible mound. As of right now, it's 6 feet. So, yeah.
And the other thing is, as he's pointing out, the system is trying to maximize the setback from wells. And those setbacks are indicated by these lines. So you really only have this space in here to work with. Correct. And our preference is that you're trying to maximize the distance, especially from neighbors' wells.
That's correct. Yeah.
In this case, it's pretty challenging to even do that. But the idea is certainly with thoughtful use of your septic system and not putting things into it that are going to affect the bacteria negatively so that they are not functioning to treat the wastes that are going there, and also not dumping toxics into your septic is, I would say, one of the best things that one could do to protect one's well. And then if you're protecting your own well that way, it's protecting the wells of others that way. So.
But that's incorporated, those theories are incorporated in the regs to begin with. I was just thinking, I was just concerned
not
when
necessarily.
I just was concerned when he said that his own wells were downhill of his own septic system. So he's increasing the septic material to the well, to the septic system that has a potential to contaminate his own well. So that's the reason that I was concerned about the homeowner. contaminating his own well and not even knowing.
So,
But increasing this flow, the septage into the system.
are we talking about location or flow?
Flow. If there's adding another bedroom, it's adding more flow.
Yeah,
Potentially.
I was trying to follow you here.
Yeah, sorry. I was just more because it's probably not, it's just unusual when a design has the wells downhill of the septic system. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe not, but I think a lot of the time those things are considered when a design is being done, and it's concerning to me that the person who's most at risk is the homeowner and or the future homeowners, and so that's why I'm mentioning it.
So at present, they have a pit that is sitting in groundwater that I think by the looks of it is even closer to their well than it is
Yeah.
now.
Right. No, I
don't
understand.
see the gradations, but I think the pit is downhill from the well, but it's definitely, I'm not
An
gonna throw a
improvement
number
over
out there,
what's there.
but I bet Eric could tell us less than 100.
Yeah.
And you know, given the constraints of the site, like it's difficult. I hate
Right. No, I get it.
granting
Yeah,
variances to neighboring wells. I do
Yeah.
not like doing that, and I certainly don't like doing it to on-site wells anymore. But when you look at how tight this is with those radii, and
Mhm.
there is this kind of like threaded needle spot. The only alternative, and Eric, you answered my question that I had, which is, could you move it out? But it sounds like you're going to have to cut down a massive amount of trees, which we know is really not necessarily going to be a gain by any means. And so I think that this is another example if we have a tight, difficult site, and this appears to be one of the best solutions that you can come up with siting.
Yeah, I would rather he move it to where it actually is going to be safer for him and the future residents, just because there's an option. But
where is that?
Well, I mean, it would involve tree removal, but it is, at least it's still an option.
Distance alone is not a guarantee. It is a guideline.
Right.
As I said, managing the septic is, I think, more important than distance.
Yeah. So what Daryl's saying is making sure that you don't put wipes and bleach and lots of things that will degrade the septic.
No, I just was asking the engineer because I just thought it caught my attention that their well is what is at risk.
Yeah.
This is a very, it's a sandy loam soil too, so it's got the perk. I mean, we had a 7 minute per inch, but it was a pretty tight soil, so I don't think groundwater, or the effluent will reach the groundwater quickly. It'll have time to clean itself, before it gets down into the groundwater. And I don't know how deep the well is, but Roger might know. Yeah, he's waving his. I think you're on mute.
Okay, Roger Demler. I think background of this might be interesting. My wife and I decided about a year ago that we're probably going to have to move in a couple of 2 or 3 years, and we knew we had a really bad septic system, and in order to sell a house, we would get inspected, and we would probably have a failed septic system. And before we moved, I said we should work with the Board of Health and build a reasonable septic system that's going to improve the situation quite a bit. And that's kind of what you're looking at here. And we looked at quite a few ways to move this around and try to protect our neighbors and that kind of thing, and came up with this design. And I said, while you're at it, size it for 4 bedrooms, because a buyer in the future would probably want to add a bedroom. And in theory, anyway, we could have requested to add a bedroom with the existing septic system kind of thing. So I said, let's do it right. And we think this is the right way to do it. the ironic thing about this meeting tonight is we had been on a waiting list for a place to move to when we expected to be in a year and a half or two. But, you know, things happened. A couple of weeks later, we got a call, and in fact, we actually moved into the new place today. So,
Wow.
so, you know,
Well,
we're trying to do the right thing
congratulations.
here.
Oh my
How
God.
long have you been in that house?
48 years.
Wow.
You ought to move every 10 years.
Wow.
Wow. Further discussion from the board.
Only that if it didn't add a bedroom, would the new septic system meet the regs?
No,
No,
No, it still doesn't meet it. Yeah, okay.
no.
That's the
That's a good
location,
question.
Rebecca. Yeah.
Yeah,
And because they do not have any Title V variances, they can do the +1.
that's, oh, yeah, it's good. I have no problem with that at all. I was just wishing we could protect the water. That's all.
yeah, so did I.
Mhm.
We should see if there are abutters present who have comments or questions. Does anyone see hands? I don't think I see any hands. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised, Daryl.
Okay. So we can move to the variances. Would you like me to do this section?
Go for it.
Okay. Do we have a motion to grant, let me just make this a little bigger, so I won't read the whole thing in the interest of time. Do we have a motion to grant a variance in section 8.01, which has to do with the 5-foot separation?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye. Sorry, I was muted.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. And the companion, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.02, also regarding separation to groundwater?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. And do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 10.1B? And this is regarding the distance to both on and off-site wells,
So
as
moved.
we've just been discussing. Thanks.
No, so moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, I'm going to abstain. You're going to get this passed anyway.
And Darrell Beardsley, aye. So close the hearing, and Mark, are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, the plans are ready for approval, conditional to the recording, a deed recording restricting a garbage grinder since it was not designed for a garbage grinder.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the plans conditional to receipt of the garbage grinder deed restriction?
And pre-construction conference? Daryl, we usually also add conditional to a pre-construction conference.
Mark, do we usually add that?
I'm sorry.
You're
the
muted.
About the approval of the garbage grinder?
Conditional to.
No, of the plans. Conditional also besides the
pre-construction
garbage grinder?
Yes, the
The-
recommendation is that the motion be that the plan be approved conditional to deed recording restricting a garbage grinder since it was not designed for one. And once we receive the garbage grinder, the plan will be released.
Do we,
Okay, so
I thought
go
we,
ahead, Julie.
I thought we usually also added in conditional to a pre-construction conference.
I would suggest that it doesn't hurt. I've had different discussion. I've heard different discussions on that, but yeah, I don't think it hurts to add that as well.
Okay. All right. So the motion's been amended to approval of the plan conditional to receipt of the garbage grinder deed restriction and a pre-construction conference.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks very much.
And good luck, and hope you have as much fun in your new home as you did in the last.
We're only moving to Ashland, so
Oh.
so I can come back and bug you.
Okay.
Thanks,
You're
everyone.
more than welcome.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Aye.
Good night.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. Mark, are there people here waiting for under agents business?
You know, I was looking to see, and I didn't recognize anyone, but I expected someone would have shown up for each one of these, especially 26 Maple.
We do.
And
We
I
have
didn't
the
see them.
architect
Okay.
here. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I
Sorry,
didn't
Mark.
see them.
I see Rebecca Elsie here for 26 Maple.
Okay, earlier I didn't see it, so thank you. So
She came
Rebecca,
in mid hearing, sorry.
that's okay. So that's related to 26 Maple Street, and I asked that that be on the agenda so the board can review it, because the board made a decision back in 2010, or in that time period when the septic system was being built, which is deed restricted to 2 bedrooms. And they would like to add a living room family room into the area of where the living room is, and add 400 square feet. It, in my view, it would go from the present design, the present floor plan of 4 rooms to 5 rooms. I find it reasonable, but because it was a board vote, I asked to have it brought back to the board so it can be discussed by the board with a vote. And I presume, yeah, thank you, Darrell. So I believe this is the existing.
Okay, existing first floor. So we have 1, 2.
Yep, yes.
And then upstairs, okay, the 2 bedrooms.
Yes.
And then okay, so now it would be 1, 2, 3. Does
Yes.
anyone else see anything different than that?
I agree.
Okay. And so the second floor appears to be staying the same.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would ask too that there be no interference or distance constraints to the septic or well. They'll need to sign that off when the building application comes in. Actually, Darrell, you were going down to the actual septic plan. If you want, we could look at that as well, just to make sure that's understood that there can't be any interference with the present septic system or well. Rebecca, if you're here, if I may, Darrell, could I ask her where the addition overlay will be on this septic plan? Is it to the left or to the right? If it's to the left, we're close to the septic system. If it's up behind the house, it's close to the well. So they would have to make sure they meet all distance requirements.
So, Mark, the location of the addition would be behind the house, so north. So between the house and the well. We still need zoning approval, so we have a general footprint, but nothing approved from zoning. So we wouldn't impede, obviously, on the well.
That's fine. What I would ask is, well, when you do go after once the Board of Health makes a decision, obviously the zoning board will need to make a decision as well. At that point, after, if decisions are made and it's approvable, then you would submit a building application. You would need to sign a negative impact form, just indicating the well is the appropriate distance from the addition. I would suggest that you overlay, once you have a decision from zoning, that you overlay that onto this plan, just so we have an idea of its location in respect to the well.
Okay, certainly.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Mark.
So that's what I would leave for the board to decide, but that I brought it to the board since it was a board decision almost 14 years ago.
Okay, I don't have any questions because it doesn't, I mean, it's a special case to have a 2-bedroom residence, but there was certainly a lot of attention given to that in the past. And it did proceed to convert to a 2-bedroom residence. And this doesn't alter that calculation, even though it is a special case, even if we apply the larger formula to it.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. It's a 5th room in a 2-bedroom house that passes muster, and it's on the 1st floor and not a bedroom.
Yeah, no, I agree. The way it's designed, the addition is not a bedroom.
And just
Okay.
a note, you couldn't put a full bathroom within that room if that was a future decision, just so the applicant and the architect realize that.
Okay,
Yeah.
understood.
Okay, so that, yes, because that could make a room, turn any room into a bedroom to have a full bath attached to it. So, okay, so I'm assuming, Mark, what you need is really authorization from the board that if the plans come in, similar to what we've seen, that would be approvable by you to move through the building application process.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So do we have a motion to authorize Mark to approve building plans for this proposed project, provided that the conditions essentially align with what we've seen this evening in terms of number of rooms and layout?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Actually, I'd ask you, Mark. So certainly the other thing, I guess if it changes significantly to where it might impact the well or septic because it needs to shift for some other reason, that'll be covered by our essentially the same as what we have.
Sure. And if it becomes an issue, obviously they would need to come back to the Board of Health for discussion and review.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Hearing,
We didn't.
are there any abutters nearby in case there's some concern? Okay, hearing and seeing none. We're ready, Steve.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
And Daryl Beardsley, aye. Okay. Are we just go in order?
Sure.
Mark?
Yeah, no, that's fine, because I'm really not for sure if there's anyone here for 93 Goulding West. But then again, I haven't looked to see who's joined us since the meeting started. I can look to see. I don't see anyone, but if they're here, if it's okay with the chair,
Yeah,
I've
certainly.
asked them to announce themselves. I don't think they're here, Daryl.
Okay.
So we could go into.
Is there any document for 25 I should start with?
We have a letter dated October 28th from Whitewater. That is the water consultant for Pilgrim Church. And they were addressing a need of the water system based on review by the DEP, because this is under the DEP jurisdiction. I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention. The acid neutralizer that's noted as existing treatment with the 5-micron sediment filter. The acid neutralizer is being considered to remove it. And from discussion and so forth on this, I've read into the fact that the backwash was the issue going into the septic system. So Whitewater is working, Culligan put the system in, and Whitewater is working with the church to design a different process to have reverse osmosis at 2 kitchen taps, as well as the bubbler, and to consider removal of the acid neutralizer. I'm sure we'll see further discussion from Whitewater or from the DEP, but in the letter you'll see on the second page, they were trying to show the pH and the hardness and raw versus finished, and the but the review that Whitewater provided was that it's the acid neutralizer is not making much of a difference anyways, but the water is below 7, but not terribly acidic, but it is below the 7 neutral pH.
Okay, so this is
General
as
information
you
to the
said,
board.
Yep. Okay, so more to come on that, and Mass DEP is reviewing their plans, I presume.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Correct, and they're reviewing it as we speak, and it's including the manganese and the iron. And I will update the board as additional information is received.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about that or comments? Okay, so 93 Goulding, and let's see.
We've been working with the applicant to finalize the final certificate for the house. The house was originally converted, and it was a rebuild from Trannon Corporation back in, I just got to get the paperwork on this. I think it was 2000. I can tell you in a minute. We have the, just get that for you.
Yeah, there are 2 plans that have the same, there are 2 files that have the same name. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Trannon Corporation was the corporation that received the conditional certificate of compliance. And then what happened was, from there, I had it in my hand. I'm sorry, I don't know where I put it down. Oh, here it is. I apologize. Here it is. Okay, so Trannon Corporation received a conditional certificate back in 2006 and 2008. The date on it was 2008 and 2009 for the well and the septic. So it's designed for a 3-bedroom house, and that's what they built based on the certificate of compliance in the house itself. And I was going to have the board look over mostly the basement plan, and to assure, to have discussion to see how the board sees the basement. And you should, I don't know if you have the existing. Yes, you have existing for the basement. I did do an overview of the existing upstairs too. Don't know if you have that here, Darryl. Existing.
I do have the first and second floor plans. So
And it has been
I guess we can clear up those floors.
Yeah, that's
and then
fine.
move to the basement.
Sure. And the most recent assessment shows it as a 7-room, 3-bedroom house. So it's a matter of looking at the basement, and for a 3-bedroom with a new system, you can go up to 8 rooms per our regulations. Because the system was built after 1995 when Title V changed. And at that point, the board updated their regulations as well to say if you have a 3-bedroom septic system built after March of 1995, that you can have up to 8 rooms. And at the same time, it's the basement that is a question. Is it 1 room or 2 rooms? And there's a full bathroom with like a wall in between the room. But we can do this first and then go from there. I mean, if you want to look at the floor plans above, Darryl, that might help at least to see them.
Okay, so let's do the second floor, which is
Sure.
we've got some interesting issues.
Yeah.
A little different than what we often see.
True.
Uh,
A lot of
we have a
bathrooms.
bedroom here.
Yeah.
And a bedroom. And a bedroom. There's
Yeah.
just one entrance into this, even though there appears to be a wall here.
Yeah.
And then
You
there's
have this.
room,
Yeah.
but it doesn't connect to this hall.
Yeah, it's another
So-
secret stairway. I agree. It
Yeah.
came to question to myself too. What is that? You know,
Mhm.
You know where the access is from below? Is it the
It go-
garage?
I'm not for sure. It could be when I went into the house, if that's the front, that most likely is the garage below.
Because if it is the garage and only accessible from the garage and not from the rest of the second floor, then
Yes.
it wouldn't be a bedroom, but it would be helpful to know where that stair.
I wish I thought the applicant was going to be here tonight, but if not, we can always invite them back to our next meeting to continue with the review, which is only 2 weeks away.
So here's, if you're seeing the first floor now, make that a little bigger.
Hmm.
So there's the stair up into
Yes.
that space.
And is the
above.
garage.
What is the
Oh,
garage?
and to answer your question, Julie, it is from the garage up.
Okay.
And since it's not connected to the other, we've seen this with other places. Usually it's separated differently. It could be where there's, say, more of a breezeway connecting one part of the house to the garage and then a room over the garage, as long as it doesn't have a bathroom, full bath associated with it. We've viewed it as another kind of living room, playroom, whatever, office we had recently. So this would be similar to that. It just happens to share an interior wall
Yes.
with the rest of the second floor, but again, is not connected. So typically we have not included that in bedroom count. It's different than the other bedrooms.
Correct. It would be a room, but we wouldn't call it a bedroom. That is correct, Darrell.
Right.
That's what has been
Right.
done. in the
So
past.
then there are the 3 bedrooms upstairs. We have a kitchen, a dining room. This room is sort of the one that's up on the second floor would count. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then this I'm seeing as 2 rooms. but
I was
I'm
going to
not
ask the
sure.
board, that is another reason I brought it to the board, because I was looking at it as 2 rooms because of the divider.
Yeah.
Is it like just a footer wall? Is it a half wall? Is it a full wall?
It appears to be a full wall from the way it was shown on the plan, because normally they would label it if it was a half wall. Again, I was hoping the client would be here to help us through this, but they're not, and I was hoping they could explain the actual existing rooms as
And
well.
I mean, I see there's kind of like this continuation. Is that possibly a step down? I mean, is it actually, I mean, it looks like it's
It
a wall.
doesn't-
But it'd be nice to have, it would be just nice to know exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's hard to know what this means right here.
That's what I'm looking at exactly. I can't tell if there is like, if this is a step or a wall. I just would like clarification.
Yeah, this looks like a wall. This, if it was a step, then I don't know what happens here. Right, a step would go all the way across.
Yeah.
Yeah, hard to know, and there's the same kind of notation here. Although that may be just relating the width. Maybe that's their symbol for width. I don't know. Okay, so it's potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the 3 bedrooms. So
Yeah,
8
so you're at your 8,
that
yes.
agreement. Okay,
You're
and now
fine.
for the basement, and all that is staying the same. I don't recall any existing proposed for the first and second floors. Is that correct?
They have not, that's correct, Darrell. They haven't indicated they're doing any work on the first or second floor.
Okay. So here, have the existing, which they indicated finish.
Pretty much unfinished. I was down there for the final inspection about 2 months ago. And unless there was a room I didn't see on the backside there.
Okay.
It's
well,
hard
then
to-
this has- Right, oil tank and oil pump
Yes.
over here, water tanks here. Water heater here,
Mhm.
another oil heater. Sorry, I'm sure if it's blurry for me, it must be even more blurry for you. These didn't blow up so easily. I wasn't sure if these were meant to indicate walls or beams in the ceiling. These very heavy lines, because they don't.
Yeah, they
look
appear to
like
be
these are
walls.
Wall line.
I wish I had taken pictures down there, but they had not applied for the building application until they received their
Mm,
non-conditional certificate of compliance. I was not aware that the extent that they would be doing this addition, to the extent.
mm.
But we
Yeah.
could ask that question too, if that wall is existing and what's the dividing for.
Or if it's an even wall. I'm
Yeah,
sort of feeling like it might be an I-beam in the ceiling,
okay.
right? Because these appear to be
Yeah.
the walls. And then they mentioned the steel post. So, all right, so that's a question. But I guess the more important part is where they're headed.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah.
So then
And
it becomes important here. It looks like they're planning to finish, right? They're isolating the oil tanks.
yes,
Beams. So if this is an I-beam in the ceiling, then this could be one space.
yeah, that's
And
the way I
this
see it.
would
And
be
it is,
one
I did
space.
ask, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The applicant did say that they are planning to have that as a finished room, even though they're calling it a storage room. And then the family room and that dotted line through the upper part of the family room, I believe is what they were considering to divide the full bathroom from the family room, but it's not a
Oh,
typical hallway that we see. It's kind of open.
yeah,
This is unique. I've never seen a setup like this before, a proposal like this.
right. And given that this almost becomes a suite anyway, to have a full bath invites a bedroom definition down there because it's got, it's separated from the rest of the house. So it could be viewed as a suite, and therefore this bathroom is connected and private. At least that's how we viewed some others that have been similar.
Yes.
Mark,
And it also looks like this would be another finished room in here. So this could be 1, 2, 3 rooms.
Correct. Yep. It is some equipment in there. I think she indicated that's going to be unfinished.
Oh, okay. Oh, because the heater is staying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the storage room is finished or unfinished proposed?
The storage room is finished.
And I guess I don't understand how there's like an open hallway. I can't visualize this.
That threw me off a little bit too. I
Yeah.
didn't know how to review it.
And I see in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, it looks like a door. Is that, I'm trying to understand where that, is that walkout to
I
grade?
believe there might be 2 steps to get up to the ground or 3 steps from that. When I was in the cellar, I did go out that door and I believe it was 2 to 3 steps up.
Okay. And I'm only seeing windows over here.
Yeah, there was mostly
I
below
don't see
grade.
any windows
Mm.
here or
Yeah.
here. I would be inclined to view this as 2 rooms and unless the bathroom was changed to a half bath, I would view it as creating a bedroom out of this family room area.
Yeah, unless we have some better pictures or some description to really to show that this is truly a hallway and this is not the bathroom opening up into this room, I would agree with you, Daryl. We need some more details to better understand what's going on accurately.
I can always invite them to the next meeting and we can put this on our next agenda and explain what was discussed tonight.
And if they're willing to give us a few pictures of the parts that we were confused about, especially thinking about this hallway.
Sure.
That would be, it's worth a lot.
Yeah, they would have to probably use some kind of a system to create it because that wall's not there right now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, that's right. Yeah, if they have a rendering from an architect or something like that, then that would certainly be helpful. But yeah. But otherwise, I would feel for half bath.
Yeah, and I would feel differently if, say, if the garage happened to be at the same level as the basement, for whatever reason. There was an entry from the garage that caused you to need to go through this space somehow and through a hallway to get upstairs. That would change my view of it from being more like a suite, but even with the hallway right now, to me it reads more as an in-law space or a suite with the full bath.
I would agree with the discussion and would suggest if they remove the full bath into a half bath and have a deed recording for these rooms in the basement, as long as it's more than half below grade, which I believe it is, that would help to resolve, because we just looked at one of this, not the same as this, but they went with the deed recording, but with a half bath to prevent any consideration for a suite.
How do you enforce a deed restriction if a person just builds something, they can just have anyone live there? I mean, how do you enforce it?
That's true, Rebecca. I agree with you. We're not the house police, unfortunately. But what happens is if the house goes for sale, they would understand this is only a 3-bedroom septic system with deed recorded rooms in the basement. That's if that full bathroom was not there. I mean, that was just a suggestion. It will be the board's final decision.
Yeah, but I mean, like the Board of Health, I could care less how many people live in this house. And I think it's a great idea for someone to have an in-law suite or family members or a nanny. I just think our job should be focused on septic flow, protecting drinking water, natural resources. We should not be involved with that sort of thing. And the deed restrictions puts us into that position. I think we should just be looking at it and saying, okay, the state says we have to consider this a bedroom, so therefore we have to think of it this way, because you have to think about septic flow, capacity, and contamination of the natural resources. So like, I don't really want to get into all that other stuff. I just want to talk about how do we enforce our regulations? How do we protect drinking water and the natural resources? That's the only thing I'm interested in. So that's my perspective. I think it's fantastic if they could have a nice little basement suite, but that's great. We just need to protect for that in advance by saying, okay, here's the risk to public health, or here are the things that would protect public health, and here's what the Board of Health recommends to protect drinking water in that, because you have this perfect situation for anybody in the future. I don't know. I think it's better for us to just sort of think ahead and make it possible for people to do that.
Are you saying they should add on to their system?
I don't know. I mean, I think we should just, our job is to say, if you increase this and the bedroom, the state law and the way we have to advise you would trip a threshold that would require this, and then they can make their own decision about what they do with their own home. But then our job is to just say, here are the rules, and here's how you could work within the rules if you want to, not have a risk of contaminating your well. I don't know. That's what I think would be cleaner than having to get into that so that we aren't, I don't know, I think we should just stick to the public health part of the conversation, because I think that would be a nice little place to have an in-law suite. And I hate to put a deed recording on it so somebody can't do it, or make it clear that they would need to increase their septic system if they did it. And then we've kind of done our job because we're just advising them of how to protect their drinking water and their neighbors' drinking water under the circumstances. And if they want to increase their living capacity, then they would need to consider increasing their septic capacity, and then they can make their own calculations and their own decision based on that.
I would assume that, Mark, they know that this is an issue to have the full bath, and if they were eager to keep that, they know that they need to expand their system. So they're trying to find out if they can do this without expansion of the
That is
septic,
correct. That is correct. That's why they designed that unique hallway, the unique wall, I'll call it, between the full bathroom and that room. But it's still, in my view, it's still open to that room.
Yes. So that's what we're doing now, Rebecca, is saying that we don't want it unless they're willing to expand their septic system.
Yeah.
We don't want this to encourage it being used as a bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad, but I'd rather talk about it in the context of public health, because I think it would be a great location for that. And it stinks that it trips the threshold, but it's only because we have to think about the sort of overall impacts of more septic flow and all that stuff.
And that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
Exactly what we're doing, and why
I'm just thinking out loud.
Full bath versus half bath. So
yeah,
you're right on target in terms of what we are talking about. Okay, so Mark, it sounds like some more information would be helpful, but I'm still a bit skeptical that hall wall is sufficient to negate this as a potential suite.
Yes, and I will relay that to the applicant and let them know that they may want to, one, be at the meeting as well as invite the architect if they have an architect.
Okay. And then the rest to me looks good in terms of without having windows, certainly here, then
yes, we
have often deed recorded rooms that don't have large windows or a walkout. So that's consistent with what we've done. And I think there was a view of this back window. This was a more sizable window, but it's in the bathroom. So that wouldn't affect those other rooms. Forget which plan that was on, but there was something. All right, any other need to look at this further? Mark, we'll get back to folks.
No, I think it definitely requires additional discussion. I just wanted.
Oh, I mean tonight. I meant tonight.
No, I don't see that at this point, Daryl, and I do see that
okay.
we have questions that need to be. The board has questions as well as myself that need to be answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So Daryl, I don't see anyone. Sean had been here for Laurel Fields, but I don't see him on right now. I
okay.
see, I believe I see folks for either our EHIR discussion or the Brush Hill room count. I don't remember who was first. I think the folks for Brush Hill are on. Oh, Sean is here. Okay.
I am here. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see you in the list. Daryl, do you want to do that?
Yes, let me just
okay. So I'll use it. So we're going to go to the Laurel Fields wells, the pump test discussion. I thought it would be helpful to the board to give a little review of kind of where we're at in the process, and then I'll let Sean kick in. So back in October, November of 2023, 2 wells were drilled over at Laurel Fields. Then in November of 23, the town's hydrogeologist, Mr. Talkington, I'm afraid I forgot his first name, of Geosphere had advised the town to hold off on witness pump testing, and at the time of initial pump tests, these are not witnessed, they were yielding about 2 or 3 gallons a minute. The select board decided to go ahead with enhancing, I believe it was one of the wells, in hopes of increasing the yield. And at present, where we stand, there has not been witness pump testing, which is our point of discussion tonight. So Sean, you can catch us up with everything and anything that I missed there, and then if you can specify your ask to the board tonight, that would be helpful.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So we did, they enhanced both wells actually, while they were out there. And, neither of them enhanced very well, but, and no pun intended. So that one of them's making, I think the one you're pointing at right now is making 2.5 gallons a minute. Actually, no, the other one's making 2.5 gallons. Despite the fact that it's artesian, when the groundwater comes up, it actually flows right out the casing. And then the other one's making about, I think 7.5 or 8. So they didn't enhance much. There's no pumps in them currently. So what they did do is, you gotta kind of back into, in a site like this, when you have no electricity, no irrigation, there's nothing there. They had to back into the design to figure out, what voltages we're gonna have, what wire poles we're gonna have, et cetera, to size the pumps. So we have that now. And what you're looking at is part of the scope of what will be the future irrigation system that'll go out to bid. But what that allowed us to do was size the 2 well pumps so that we can complete the well installation so that we can actually flush them and get quality tests on them. So we're getting ready to move forward with that. The well pumps themselves will most likely be installed by Cummins Well and Pump, who does the lion's share of the well work for the town. So it obviously won't be hooked to any permanent power right now because there isn't any on the site. So the intent is to get the well pumps installed and then bring a generator out there, flush the wells, and run another witness test on them. This is just timely in that one, and although we did a test, it was basically just a pre and post test from the enhancement. We didn't pull quality samples because we didn't feel like we flushed it enough, and we didn't have permanent pumps in there. They dropped a test pump in just to flow it. So the intent here is to try and get some quality tests, which obviously everyone wants to see. We're eager to see that. And then be able to do a witness pump test and make sure the drawdown is okay. At about the same time, obviously the intent is to go out to bid with these plans that you see. That system's been designed around what the yield is, but nothing will be built, no contracts will be signed until we have, the wells are signed off, hopefully in the next couple months. We think we'll have the pumps. I talked to Paul from Cummins Well and Pump today. There's a few more items he just needs to verify with the wire size and everything else for the drop. But he thinks within the month he could have the pumps in and ready. And then because it's 3-phase power, we gotta find some decent sized generators to do that. But I have some resources for that.
Okay. Are there any of there are a number of plans I just pulled up this one. Is there anything different I should be showing, or the irrigation system plan?
Not really. We're not really going to get into the specifics of that because we're really just focusing on the 2 well heads. There is a different, there's a different sheet that kind of shows what he spec'd out for the well pumps, but there's nothing there that you're not accustomed to, which is a casing, and the difference is these are 8-inch wells, which is unfortunate because they're not yielding much more than a 2-inch well would have yielded. But that's just for the purposes of him putting it out to bid to show what was gonna be there.
Darrell, if I may.
Yes.
Sean, what I would suggest is share my contacts with Cummings Well and Pumps.
Yeah.
And that way we can coordinate what our requirements state for the well pump test. They may want to do more than that, as well as if they need to know what our regulations state for the water quality, we can coordinate ahead of time. So
Yeah.
and start discussion. So that would be great. Thank you, Sean.
So I see the proposed tankage here.
Uh-huh.
Are there 3 15,000-gallon tanks or?
No, 3 5,000. 15,000 gallon tanks
Okay.
are very large and hard to, it's
Yeah,
expensive.
that's
Truck
why I
we
was
actually,
asking.
we opted to go with 3 5s. I have one actually at my yard. Those are more readily available. That was the biggest reason. Plus, we don't need to put a concrete pad for the 5,000 gallon tanks. You can put them on good compacted gravel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So is there anything else for us besides the pump testing, I would assume, coming up, and timeline on that? Or
Yeah,
unknown?
I'm open within a month. Yeah, there's no real action for you guys. I just, we felt it was timely to bring back to you so that, in the next few months, when we get into the interim period where we go out to bid on the project, it doesn't seem like we blindsided the Board of Health, because nothing's going to happen until everything's signed off. But it takes quite a while to advertise everything and get the specs finished for the other half of this project that is the irrigation system, but not the wells.
And so I recall, I think it was potentially Mr. Talkington, I can't quite remember. There was kind of a discussion around the duration of the pump test. Do you have any recollection of that?
With the board, or?
I believe he was giving recommendations to the town, and
Well, there was discussion initially on doing whether or not we do a 4-hour test or a 48-hour test. Obviously, the town's regulations on the on the typical residential wells, the 4-hour test. When we initially there's been a couple different iterations with these wells, gravel pack, and then these 8-inch boreholes. We also thought we were going to be hitting 50 to 60 gallons a minute. So those concerns with drawdown. So we talked about doing a 48-hour test. So I don't know what.
I'll even a mention, I guess, I don't know what the current, say, daily, weekly plan is for draw would be, but there was also mentioned by someone from, trying to remember, Geosphere. I can't remember the name of the firm.
That was the geotech guy.
Okay. But they mentioned a 5-day pump test early on when they came to meet with us. So,
yeah, I don't remember.
I don't know if that's changed, but
we did talk about monitoring certain areas.
Yeah.
And it some of that is based on when you think you're going to be pulling 100 gallons a minute out of the out of the earth. I would think your cone of influence is a little bit different than 2.5 gallons a minute. So it's worth studying what we should do and what's realistic. I think it's still worth monitoring some of the neighbors' wells and or the surface wells that are local. But right now,
And
the
I
focus
guess,
is physically getting the pumps in there so we can actually pump water.
right, and it's the idea or the need to pump 24 hours a day to fill the tanks. I guess that would be another, or just
there will be a need to
how
do that.
much are they going to be pumping?
We're not talking about a huge number of neighbors. I think do we have any abutters to this property on the call? I don't know. I wouldn't recognize them if they were here. But it seems like that would be something that I would be interested in at least offering to the abutters. Again, I think we're talking about a small handful of properties that abut this. And of course, it's their prerogative whether or not to take it, but I would be interested in making sure that we have that on the table for them. And I certainly, for the volume that we're looking to store here, I would be interested in the 48-hour. But I also, Mark, I'm wondering if you have any insight between the 4 and the 48-hour that you want to share with us.
What I would suggest is that we find out what the demand will be and how much water they need to use daily. And then we could figure out that demand to see how, well, once we know the pump rate as well, we'll be able to determine how long these wells will need to be on to fill up these tanks. And do they need to be filled up more than once a day? Then we can decide if maybe a 48-hour or more type well pump test is needed to determine if they will, for the sake of the town, to make sure they stay active, that they don't run out of water during the pump and drawdown. So I would suggest, working with the consultant to see what was requested, to see actually what the demand will be. And then they can work with us to let us know what their request might be for a pump test. And they probably will want to see if the wells stay active or they run out of water. If they start to run out of water during the pump test, then they will regulate them to a pump rate, such as we say, keep the well wide open, the faucet wide open. So they're pumping what the pump itself can produce. But wells will draw down to the point where they can't reach any further water, and then they refill. And so the pump test will be important, but the duration of that pump test will also be important to see if they can withstand a certain pump rate, say at 48 hours, if that's the need. And again, I'm going to rely on the consultants to help us out with what they need for the demand.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll get the rest of the mechanics of getting them working and submit back the plan of, what we intend to do. Again, we got to get them up and running. It's going to be a generator out in the field, so we need to be cognizant of that. We can't keep repeating it because it's fairly costly to hook up a 3-phase generator up in the middle of the ball field, let alone 2 of them, because we got to run them both at the same time. So we'll nail that with Mark, and probably, I'm sure there'll be time to get it back to the board if we need to, in the interim before the test.
That sounds good to me. Before we go to the hands raised, is there any other board members who have anything to add? Bob, your hand was up first.
I think what the issues I have already been raised.
Go ahead, Bob.
So I have 2 questions, one for Sean, if that's all right, Julie, and then one for the board. And I'm in favor of this. I have no objection at all. I think it makes a lot of sense. But my first question is, Sean, do you have some idea of the kind of peak demand that we might experience in terms of, in the hottest months of summer when you really need to hit the field to keep it up? What would the gallons per day look like, do you think, from both wells?
Well, it actually goes the other way, because we know what the wells will yield right now, which isn't much. So the system's only really designed to handle and, to give the fields what the wells can safely do. That would have been a completely different design if we hit 50 gallons a minute.
Right, but I'm just trying to get some sense. I mean, if we're talking 3 gallons a minute, and you can run it for 24 hours, it's still a fair amount of water, obviously.
Yeah, well, that was the basis of the design, was put 15,000 gallons in tanks so that you have enough to pump. You slow fill it, and
Sure.
I don't know, I don't want to speak for the consultant, but it was something like you can run it for 20 and let it recover for 4 or something.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense as a way to
And
design.
again, if that was in the ground right now, I'm pretty sure we would have shut it off about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Exactly. Anyway, okay, maybe, I mean, at some point, obviously, you'll have more information on those numbers, and I'd love to be aware of them.
Right.
And then my question to the board is, and it's really a kind of a more public policy question related to this, and that is, not that many months ago, older folks in our community at Sherborn Meadows came to you, and they sought approval of an irrigation well so that they could grow some flowers as they, live their retirement years at Sherborn Meadows. And you all denied it. And I'm just trying to square up the denial, and there are very few abutters up around Sherborn Meadows, as most folks know. And I'm just trying to square up, like I said, I'm in favor of water in these fields. I have no objection, but I'm trying to square up the denial of the Sherborn Meadows application for irrigation well.
Yeah, that's a good question, Bob, and it was one that I was thinking about too. And I think for that one, we didn't deny it. They came as a discussion point. And at that point, when we had asked them about what alternatives they had sought, they really hadn't sought anything else at that point. And so our encouragement was to go back and look at your landscaping practices, to look at what else that you can be doing to conserve the water that you already have on site, because they had water on site and this site doesn't have anything at the moment.
Right, but the water they have on site, as we all know, is terribly expensive relative to having an irrigation well. And it's, these are people on fixed incomes. So I remember the conversation as being a fairly hard no, when I listened to it many months ago. But anyway, to me, why are we doing it for our kids and not for our seniors to grow some flowers? Literally, the woman said they just want to grow some flowers and have a green lawn. And I can't square those two things up, but I'm all set. Thank you.
They're also
Can I make a comment to that?
They're totally different issues. And this went to town meeting and the Board of Health stated their opinions, but this was out of our hands, and the wells and the requests of that particular home and center were under the jurisdiction of Board of Health, and we were discussing it in the context of public health.
I guess I'm just looking at the decisions we're making as a community, whether it's town meeting or whether it's the Board of Health or whatever. It seems like as a community, we want to make decisions that are kind of consistent and make sense for our community.
I don't think the Board of Health decided that these irrigation wells were being placed. This was not a Board of Health jurisdiction decision.
Okay.
Sean,
Thank
did
you.
you want to respond?
The Meadows owns an irrigation pond, do they not?
But the board would not approve an irrigation well for them.
They don't even need a well, they got a pond.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
own that pond that's on the Framingham border?
I honestly, I'm not aware, Sean. I don't know. If that's true, then obviously they should use that pond, but that's kind of the same thing, isn't it? I mean.
Well, I would add that we haven't finished with this evaluation, and we had asked for further information from Meadows, and I had the opportunity to have a discussion with residents there, informal discussion, where they weren't even aware that that was a plan, and nor did those particular residents see a need for it. So, and it just hasn't come up again since then. So there were other discussions, and we had talked about alternatives that they might pursue there, just as that has come up before regarding Laurel Fields. Is certainly in time of drought, it's going to be very hard to prioritize watering fields over making sure that people have drinking water. So but we haven't seen the plans. I think they need to understand what the water is to then start looking at plans. But I wholeheartedly agree that to establish new fields or grass or whatever reseeding is necessary, you can't do that very well unless you've got just the right rainfall conditions. So on that kind of basic level of getting fields started, you usually need an irrigation system, unless you magically have a week of light rain, then it will work. But if you don't have that, it's really hard to get the grass going. So, so it might be spot irrigation rather than constant irrigation. Don't know yet. Have to figure out what's even there. And then how it's going to be managed, and how it's going to be managed during droughts or shut off during droughts.
Tom Trainer? Tom, go ahead.
Thank you. Tom Trainer here, 97 Washington Street. I just thought I'd add a data point or two for your discussion here, and I can send you a map of the area from the Groundwater Protection Committee's mapping of private wells and septics. The nearest neighbor's wells are like 900 feet to the general area where these wells are proposed, and there's not that many wells either. That distance, a couple on Rockwood, and then 2 or 3 on North Main Street. So I'm not a hydrogeologist, but I think there's not a high density of residential wells. And although I believe that map that we did for the Recreation Department was shared with their hydrogeologist to help support their case, and I'm very much for myself as a resident and former parent of soccer players to get that dusty field irrigated. But if you'd like, I could send you that map.
Thanks, Tom. That would be helpful. All right. Seeing no other hands. Thank you, Sean. Come back to us when you have some more information. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
We have, I see, well, hang on, do we still have people? I see folks here for both, I think our 34 Brush Hill room count, and I think I also see folks here for our EHIR discussion regarding Farm Road. I'm not sure if we have a preference which order to take it, and I'm sorry folks, I don't remember who was here first. We usually try to go in that order. Darrell, what do you think?
Let's do 34 Brush Hill. Just pull up the plans.
The room count. So we're just going to do the room count because that's usually something that we include into a memo to the ZBA. So Bob, I know.
Could I just clarify something about the discussion, Julie, that I think is important? Could I just clarify, is this a discussion relative to the Title V application, or is it a discussion relative to the comprehensive permit application? Either.
Comprehensive permit. Good question.
Okay, but I just would like, I'd like to keep them separate if.
And so I know they're within the set, there are plans for a 2- and 3-bedroom home, but just in case folks aren't updated, the current proposal is for 8 2-bedroom homes. There are 0 3-bedroom homes. So we only have to look at the 2-bedroom. That's easy. And I think that's what you have up here, Darrell, right?
Yeah.
Well, Darrell, you have the cursor. I think it'll be easier for the person with the cursor to do the counting.
Okay. All right, room count. All right, let's start over here. So it's labeled as a den. There's a dining room. There's a kitchen. It's shown with chairs. this is a little debatable. Eat-in kitchen or kitchen dining. It's labeled as 2 rooms, so I guess we'll stick with that for the moment. 1, 2, 3. We have living room, and then bedroom 1, and then upstairs, bedroom 2, and then there's a loft, and there is precedence in town for lofts. This is basically either a low wall or just a railing around the stairs. That keeps this area open, therefore doesn't afford the privacy that one would expect for a bedroom. And 59 North Main has a number of lofts of this general ilk.
Yeah, and I think in that, at 59 North Main, I think that there was language just around making sure walls were not put off, that loft was remained open. And I think that's what we consider here too. All right.
Forget if there was, it's been a week or something, a couple weeks.
And so,
was there a basement plan in here or no? Bob, is there a basement plan before I scroll, make everyone dizzy scrolling around? No basement plan, okay.
Are there proposed
basements intended?
Bob, are there basements planned for these units or are they slabs?
There are basements in the units, yes.
And unfinished?
I should say it's likely some of them will have basements, some will not. But they're not finished.
Okay.
Mark, do you have any particular comments on the room count?
I
Even
think,
including these 2 I come out with.
yeah, as you say, they
Daryl, I was under the impression we had an agreement that Mark would not be involved in my projects going forward.
Oh, yes.
I'll recuse my comments then.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we have 4 or 5 on the first. We have 1 room on the second, 2 bedrooms. Yeah, I think the only thing that I would, Daryl, could you go to the external drawing real quick for me? I think it's 1 page down. I just want to look above. I'm sorry, I haven't looked at this in a long time.
Yeah, it's not treating page 2 as a full page.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
let me check the other one, the architectural.
And I'm sorry, Bob, I don't recall, if you could refresh my memory. Is there a request for a 2-bedroom deed recording for these units? I don't remember.
I don't think we've discussed it, but I'd happy to provide that. That's, to the extent you all had a concern, that's the answer. That's the way the answer, or that's the way it's always dealt with under Title V. So, I mean, if it's not necessary, no one ever wants to put a deed restriction on a home, but.
The CBA has historically, for projects that have a system-sized bedrooms, has had that as part of the documentation.
We certainly made that offer on Greenwood when we went through the process there. That offer was rejected, I'll remind you.
I'm trying to, for Daryl, I have to go back and see, if 59 North Main was, deed recorded. I can't remember. I'm sorry, I haven't looked into that recently. Thank you for the
There are
extra.
other-
It does not look like, there is, a space above the garage. I was just looking at that. So I think the only thing here at all is just that the stairwell to the second floor remain open, so, and not a full wall. Does anyone else from the board have any thoughts or comments for feedback to the ZBA?
If the basement is a walkout and is, I think I recall that there were different views. These don't look like a full walkout to me.
You're getting into the 3-bedroom, Daryl. Those don't
Yeah,
exist.
right. As long as and I don't know if I recall something being different here, yes. So the question would be, is this kind of configuration determined by the terrain on the site or by the house design being built?
It's the site always takes advantage of a walkout. And that's, that's what
Okay,
an
so
architect.
that gets into the issues that we've had before of spaces that are ready-made to be finished.
So you would call unfinished space in the basement a bedroom? Is that what you're saying?
No, but it's just an issue that we would raise as cautionary of what could happen in that
Sure.
space and whether it would turn into a bedroom.
You're always able to raise your concerns.
I see Mr. Lauterbach has his hand raised. We'll go to the public. Go ahead, Mr. Lauterbach. Andrew. I'm not sure if you're speaking, Andrew, you're on mute. Oh.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. And can you see me? Yeah. So anyway, on a property like this one where groundwater is so impacted, I think it would be crucial to put a deed restriction limiting the number of bedrooms, because I would be very surprised if you didn't have a deed restriction, that once the properties would be sold, that the loft would have a door put on either the downstairs or the upstairs, giving it the privacy that it would need to put a bed and make it a bedroom, and the same for the basement. So I think the only way to control it would be with a deed restriction.
I think we have to go back to, and so this, just to be clear, normally we look at this, but in the comprehensive permit process, this falls under the ZBA, and so we are in an advisory role here. But for the loft, because this is very similar to 59 North Main and what was proposed there was language in that comprehensive permit that I need to go back and revisit. It's been a little while since I've looked at it to see how they condition that. But it was exactly as kind of what you said in terms of like making sure the loft is not closed off and made into a bedroom. There was language around that. So I think we would have to refer back to that as well.
Julie, can I speak to precedent on this issue?
For within town? Okay, go ahead.
Sure. Abbey Road also, and I wasn't involved in 59 North Main Street, obviously, but I was involved in Abbey Road. Abbey Road was a market rate project with not an affordable component to it. And the board did not require a deed restriction with almost exactly the same floor plan. And as a practical matter, Andy, I'm very aware of the homes at Abbey Road, and none of them have been closed in with one exception. And those folks came to the board and worked through the issue with the Board of Health after, several years after the fact. They don't really lofts don't really lend themselves to being closed off.
It depends. And I don't know the situation, Bob, on Abbey Road and how comparable it is to Brush Hill, number of bedrooms per house, groundwater, they're all different. So I don't know. I can't make that comparison. I don't think a comparison can be made. I just know that somebody buying a 2-bedroom house that has space elsewhere in the house, they're going to want to make that into a bedroom.
But I mean, they can't without going through legally. I'm not saying what people do, but frankly, you could make another bedroom in your house right now illegally, right?
Right.
Why would you have more of a concern in an affordable housing project that somebody would do that when you can do it? I mean,
I couldn't agree with Bob.
What people do illegally is problematic. I always tell people, when I have buyers come through and they'll say something, oh, I'll just do that afterwards. And I say, do not do that. That is a horrible idea for many, many reasons. I feel very strongly about that, but I don't think we can kind of regulate the illegal things people are going to do in their homes. Why should we regulate this project more than your house is the argument I would make. Honestly, I really don't care. You want to put a 2-bedroom deed restriction on it. If you say you support the project with a 2-bedroom,
I didn't say, Bob.
Let's go. Yeah, you get my point, Andy. This is not something for us to spend a lot of time arguing about. I'm willing to give you the deed restriction.
Okay.
The non-issue. We have much more important things to talk about.
Sure.
So in this role, Andy, we are simply kind of flagging or highlighting things to the ZBA and making any kind of recommendations to them, and then they're the ultimate determinants of that. That is, in this process, this is outside of our purview.
Okay, thank you.
But that's a good question. And the issues of lofts have come up many times.
And ZBA historically has been interested in that bedroom count being part of, say, homeowners association documents, because people are sharing a septic system as they would be here. And so to be increasing the load would have an impact potentially on many others. So they have handled it that way. Yes, we are relying on people going through the proper channels if they're going to be amending properties, and we could get alerted that way. Abbey Road was maybe not the absolute first, because there's Leland Farms, so that was also Abbey Road wasn't a 40B project, but it was EA, which automatically allowed 2-bedroom units, and the nature of the way things were laid out was specified. So there are a lot of moving parts, but it was also one of the first things. And so given the number of things that came before us with what people wanted to do, part of the reason for deed restrictions is to alert future occupants about what the conditions are if they're not getting that information through some other mechanism. Kind of a future buyer's information.
Any further comments? Questions? Okay. I think we're kind of slowly compiling, but we'll eventually go into a memo. Should we go to the other topic that we have folks here for? Oh, I crossed off the wrong thing. So should we go to the EHIR Farm Road?
Sure.
Okay, this was a point of discussion that we wanted to, Bob, can I introduce it?
I just wanted to make sure that all the board members had received the information that I sent yesterday. That's all. I was just trying to confirm that all the board members were in receipt of the information before you began the discussion.
Can you refresh what that was?
Sure. I sent an email, bear with me 1 second, on Tuesday, yesterday at 6:40 p.m. That started a brief review of BOH minutes, and then I went on to talk about precedents. And obviously it's information that I wanted to be reviewed by the entire board for this discussion. I just want to make sure it went in.
Did you send
before
it
we
to
began, that's all.
Did you send it to the entire board?
I don't have the email address. I don't have the email addresses of the entire board. In fact, I've been admonished for doing that in the past.
Okay.
So no, I did not. I sent it to the chair.
Yes, and we'll talk about that another time because we're also collecting background information. So one, it wasn't specifically, I mean, it can fall under the EHIR, but we also we need to collect information on it, on those other properties, so that we can compare, because I don't believe they're directly.
But actually, that wasn't my question. My question was the information that I provided distributed to the full board in advance of the discussion tonight?
I think I sent it on, and I don't have my email open right now, so I can't check.
Well, maybe Rebecca or Diana or Steve could confirm that they've received it. It's important to me when I submit information that it be distributed to the full board, obviously.
And it's been a very busy week. If I missed it, it's only because it's been a busy week, and it will be distributed if it hasn't been already.
So
Okay.
I think we're not sure, but can we move forward with the discussion?
Of course. It's your meeting. I just disappointed that the board didn't get the information.
Well, we don't have the answer. I'm afraid we don't know. So we received guidance in terms of the application of our Article 3, Regulation 3 for the Environmental Health Impact Report. And as a reminder to the board that this was recently updated in November of 2023. Part of that included our definition for words project. And so within that, in addition to the activities and the thresholds laid out in the regulation for a development to qualify as a project, or we could say meeting projectness, it generally ought to be contiguous. And there needs to be a link between the properties in the form of some sort of shared infrastructure. So examples of this could include a common driveway that serves more than 2 homes or a shared private way. And so within our regulations, we have tied this to a special permit from the planning board. And so the planning board has a regulation that if you are proposing a common driveway serving more than 2 homes, you have to apply for a special permit. And so we've tied to that. If you have other common infrastructure, such as a common well, a shared well, or a shared septic system. But one of the things that does not bring something to the level of projectness or project-like is the identity of ownership. That is not one of the features that we would consider. And so when we're looking at, because this was the topic that brought us here, was Farm Road, really it is any lots that are linked together through shared infrastructure that would be subjected potentially to an EHIR if in aggregate they tripped one of our thresholds that we've laid out here. And so does that kind of checking in with the board to see how people are following with that? So if you have an A&R lot that is standing by itself, it has a driveway with access to the right of way. They have their own well that is not shared. They have their own septic that is not shared. There's no common infrastructure with any other contiguous lots. Then that is not cannot be considered part of an EHIR trigger. So it could not be rolled into a 2,000 gallon aggregate or counted towards 10 dwellings or any of the other following. I'm looking for faces to see if this is making sense so far, or kind of questions maybe we've time to process. And so since we are talking about farm, one of the so we've 53 farm was lot 2, and that as far as I am aware, that has no shared infrastructure. We have recently approved the well and septic applications for lot 3. I know submitted to the board was a plan for lot 4, and I will tell you, Bob, that the board has not seen that plan, and so you know, since we haven't seen it, can you clarify to us if there is shared infrastructure with lot 4 and any of the other existing lots or future lots potentially?
So there is, as I think most folks know, a common driveway, which will be used by both lot 3 and lot 4, yes.
And so it's currently proposed for 2 homes?
It's currently proposed for 2 homes, that's correct, yes.
And is that, and so I guess, you know, working this through, if.
Julie, could you put that back up? That was really helpful to see it, if you don't mind. I was reading as you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And so just as a matter of process, if that common drive were then to be expanded to serve more than 2 homes, I would imagine that that would go to planning board for the special permit. And then that would kind of come back to us.
Yes, I don't know if it's called a special permit. I think it's called a common driveway permit, but same idea. You're right. It requires planning board oversight to have more than 2 homes share a private driveway. I agree with that. Yep. So before we go further, could you just walk me or walk us, all of us who are listening tonight, through the language, because I don't think it's on the page that you have up right now.
The definition.
Right? It's the project thing, right, that you put in place recently.
I think, Daryl, he's referring to the definition down here.
But is that where is the language that says if the homes share an infrastructure, and I'm not trying to be argumentative at all, I'm just trying to follow the logic that you're putting out. Where is the language that says an EHIR if it shares infrastructure, whether it's water, driveway, or whatever? Can you point me to that? Is that in this project paragraph?
So again, we are receiving guidance.
Yep.
The question had been kind of, can A&R lots be rolled up into an EHIR, right? And so
Yes.
we're coming back to answer that, which is.
Yes. And I appreciate that, yes. Yep.
If there is a shared infrastructure amongst A&R lots, then there's that potential for the lots that share that infrastructure. But for lots that don't share the infrastructure, then they're not.
Right. So for example, just to throw examples out there, 53 Farm Road doesn't share any infrastructure, so you wouldn't roll it up. The Greenwood homes don't share any infrastructure, so you would not roll them up. On
Correct.
Washington, I've proposed 2 homes that share a driveway, but it's not going to go over the 2,000 gallons.
Correct.
Okay. So it sounds like it's not applicable to any of the homes on Greenwood. It will be applicable to the two homes I've proposed on Washington Street, because they share a driveway, or at least that's the current proposal. And then on Farm Road, what I'm hearing you saying is that Lot 3 and Lot 4, which share a driveway, you would look to see if they're more than 2,000 gallons and apply the EHIR requirement if those two. If there were more homes on that driveway, then when I hit 2,000 on that driveway, you're saying I would trigger the requirement. Am I hearing that correctly?
If that proposed driveway that serves two homes was expanded to serve 5 homes, I don't know, we're gonna pick a number.
Yeah.
Then yes, yep,
Right.
and they all would be rolled in.
Well, but it's not about the number of homes, it's about the gallon.
Gallons. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
So, and for folks listening, because, you know, it gets confusing when we talk about homes and then we talk about bedrooms. As soon as you exceed 18 bedrooms, you get an excess of 2,000 gallons per day.
No, I think it's 19, Julie. I think 18.
But in excess, greater than 18.
Yeah. So 19 is the number that would trigger it. Yeah. So the word about it is in this project section, right? In determining whether a project is subject to and or other the entirety of the project, including but not limited to not so the following criteria considered when determining whether the various work or activities constitute one project, including but not limited to compromise a common plan, regardless of whether between the work activities. So it doesn't say it doesn't really point to a driveway in that listing. Is it back up in the upper section that's driving that?
Yep, exactly. It's up in it's further up. Within that project definition, there is kind of this, I don't want to say implicit.
Well, it's the concept of a common plan, I think, is what.
Yes.
Right. But can you go back up then to the piece that says common driveway so we can look at that together?
Yes, and that one's different. This one, but the comprise a common plan. Do you see the highlight? I'm just
Yeah, I do.
curious.
Yeah,
highlighted. Okay, so I just didn't know if that was coming through on everybody's screen. So that speaks to the shared infrastructure.
The following criteria.
Common plan, right? They both need to have egress over the same path. That would be
criteria considered when
common plan. They're interlinked.
Because up above, you talk about an application to construct 10 or more dwelling units, being, using a private driveway. So I'm losing.
It's a little redundant, I guess. Yeah.
Well, but then I think it would have to come, because obviously if it's 4 homes, then 1A doesn't apply if it's 4 homes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but then go back down to project, because I'm not seeing the common driveway be in that language of project. So that's what's confusing to me.
One is more generic and one is more specific.
Well, can we go back to the generic?
Could probably be improved, but that.
I think it was the placement of or up above.
In determining the entirety of the project, including but not limited to any likelihood.
Within this too, we have anytime.
So it says the following criteria are considered when determining whether the various work or activities constitute one project, including but not limited to whether the work or activities taken together compromise a common plan, regardless. But you never say, you start the sentence by saying the following criteria, but then I'm not seeing the criteria.
The criteria there, the first one is very long, but there are semicolons.
Well, no, but I'm asking, so it talks about the following criteria. So in order for me to know, I need to know what the criteria are, but I'm not seeing any criteria.
Including but not limited to whether the work or activities taken together comprise a common plan. So that the common plan is the shared infrastructure, right? Or something that links the lots. There has to be a linkage. And then it goes on to say, regardless of whether there's one or more proponents, so again, that's identity of ownership, that's not the point. Any time interval, so it can be, now and in 2 years. Whether the environmental health separable, right, and then separable or cumulative. So that goes back to kind of timing and the aggregation.
So I think what I hear you saying, let me just go back to, I can't see what you're saying is there, but let's put that aside, because I don't think it's helpful to spend a whole lot more time on that. But let me just again clarify. So you're saying that in the case of Farm Road, which is a specific example, if I have a common driveway for all of the homes which are accessed on the 65 Farm Road side, not obviously the 53 Farm Road or the 55 Farm Road, that you will allow me to build up to 18 bedrooms of septic in 4 homes or in 5 homes. It doesn't really matter to you how many homes there are. What triggers it is the 2,000 gallons all being on a common driveway. That's what I think I hear you saying, right?
Well, the number of homes, if you had 10 2
Oh,
bedrooms.
yeah, no, of course. But I'm in this case, whether it's 4 or 5, in this specific example, you're not going to care. You're just
Which comes first, 10 or 2,000 gallons?
right, but it would be in this case it would be you would be okay with 4 homes of 18 bedrooms is what I'm hearing you say tonight on a common driveway.
4
Only
homes.
or only 18 bedrooms and 4 homes on a common driveway.
In aggregate.
Does not trigger the AHIR. I think that's right. I'm not trying to twist you around, Julie. I think that's what you said.
Well, if they had a shared septic system, I mean, the common driveway is not the only.
Okay, fair enough. No, I got it. Fair enough. I understand. Anything that's common, whether it's a driveway or a septic system or whatever, I can't go more than, even if they're A&R lots, you're saying under your regulations, I can't build more than 18 bedrooms. That's what
There is a linkage.
Yep.
Of the lots through shared infrastructure, and they surpass these thresholds, right?
Yep.
Then it's a project.
Okay, I think I don't necessarily agree that down under the project definition that it addresses a common driveway, but let's not argue about that tonight. I got the information that I needed, which is what you guys are going to do faced with certain situations, and that's very helpful, and I'm grateful for you taking the time to do that.
Mary, thank you for waiting patiently. Go ahead.
Thanks, Julie. Mary Moore, 49 Farm Road. I just had a couple questions. You mentioned the A&R lots, and I was curious. I don't believe that the A&R lots have been formed yet. I just wanted to confirm either with the applicant or with Bob that is the case. I think there's one A&R that was created for 53, but I don't think the other A&R lots have been done. Is that correct?
That is correct. The A&Rs are proposed in the applications, which is the way 53 was built. It's the way the Greenwood houses were permitted. It's a common practice. that someone would show proposed A&R lines. And then, in fact, this board consistently will vote to permit something conditional on the A&R that's shown to them being put in place and being endorsed by the planning board and recorded with the registry. So, but to answer your specific question, the A&R plans have not been recorded, correct?
So I guess, just sort of sounding a little bit, maybe I'm dumb or naive on this, but you've talked about doing 5 projects. There's really one place to put a road in.
5
and
projects?
5 houses, sorry, 5 houses, projects, we shouldn't use that word. You've talked about putting 5 houses in, and, from what we can see on this common driveway, that's probably where you're talking about putting the access for the other homes. And
correct, yes.
I just, I think I said this in the public information session, it'd be really better for everybody if we could just see the full picture. And I don't understand why you aren't willing to do any HIR if the project is going to be a bigger project that could impact the neighbors.
Well, clearly, Mary, this is the first moment that it has been explained to me how the board intends to interpret this rule. Like I said, I don't necessarily agree, but I am grateful that the board has now explained how they intend. So, I mean, until this moment, it's very hard for me to decide what I want to do because I didn't know how this was going to be interpreted. Is that fair? I mean,
okay, no, that's fair. I guess another point, sorry, the cat is meowing, I apologize. I do think there is an element of a shared infrastructure in the easement for stormwater that's with 53. It's on the deed. And I don't know what, that may have been something that was intended when you're considering the 40B project, but it is something that, has been discussed in public meetings. And for me, that's sort of infrastructure, to help stormwater get away from wherever the building is going to happen. So we don't have to comment on that. I just wanted to point it out.
Yeah, no, I will answer real quickly because I think you probably haven't thought of it, but just because I live it every day. I don't agree with you that a pipe easement, which is not even been used, it's just simply an easement that could be used in the future, would rise to the level of a common plan. But let's put that aside because even if that were true, which in my opinion it's not, this law was not put in place until well after 53 was permitted. So I don't know how you could take a law from 2023 and apply it to something that was permitted and built in 2020, 21. I can't see how that makes any legal sense. Does that make sense? In other words, this law is new, and 53 Farm Road was built before this law was in place.
Okay.
And I don't agree with your interpretation anyway.
Well, I just am pointing out that there seems to be some infrastructure that exists that I would debate.
It doesn't exist. There's an easement. I agree with you.
Okay, and if it does go into place, then it exists and it connects all the lots.
I don't anticipate that to be
okay. I guess the last thing I think I asked this before is, why not do any HIR if, you have a full idea of what you want the full bigger project to be? What would be
because I will, if now that I understand this rule, if I want to build more than 18 bedrooms, then it's pretty clear the board's going to require me to do that, unless I want to challenge it legally, which I'm not suggesting tonight. That's a very likely scenario. But, I did just get the explanation, so I need to kind of process it. But assuming that I wouldn't challenge it legally, which that's not my immediate reaction, then if I want to build more than 18 bedrooms off of that common driveway, now that I know, what the interpretation of the rule is, then I would come with an EHIR. I don't think that's a terribly likely scenario in my head at this point. You always ask me what I'm thinking, so I'm telling you right now what I'm thinking, that I would just proceed with 18 bedrooms.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Mary. Brian, go ahead.
Hi, Brian Moore, 49 Farm Road. I wanted to make sure that the letter that we prepared and sent in earlier this week was also circulated to board members. In there, you will find that there is some concerns about where these lots are relative to the flooding. And there's also the equivalent of an EHIR that we paid for with our expert to review the nitrogen loading that's going to go on, and a map of where those septics are relative to our property line. Now, we are not the closest property to where these septics are being proposed. Yet the expert that we hired, who testified actually in front of this board years ago about this very issue, confirmed that indeed from these lots, we're going to wind up with nitrates coming across our property line above 10 milligrams per liter. It was heard in Board of Health meetings before these original lots as proposed were withdrawn from consideration. The exact process of that, I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that Scott Horsley appeared in front of this board and testified. It's in a recorded meeting, and his report is attached to the letter that we circulated. So, I'm going to say and repeat exactly what I said in the public meeting on the 23rd, which is that we've hired the expert to do the equivalent of an EHIR. That expert has stated unequivocally that we're going to have more than 10 milligrams per liter crossing our property line as a result of this development that Bob is proposing, or the applicant's proposing. And we're not even the closest parcel to those septics. There are other people who have properties that are closer. So I really would like for the Board of Health members to look at that and consider that in their deliberations about before moving forward with any kind of approval of these lots, and continue to have these open meetings where we can discuss and vet these issues. Thank you.
Julie, I'd like to answer all of that, but I think we're outside of the scope of your agenda item for tonight.
I was going to say, I think it's 9:30 and we are not done with our topic, with our list tonight. And so I think we need to kind of rein it in, and I am sure that this will, lot 4 will be before us. And so it's not that this issue is gone. So without an administrator, forwarding on stuff to the board is clearly one of our weak points. That is a takeaway from tonight. That is something that we will work on going forward, is making sure that stuff is forwarded to the rest of the board. And Brian, I can say that I certainly did not forward that letter on to the rest of the board. I don't know about Daryl, but that is something we can do after this. I don't know the timing of when you had that report done. Relative to lot 2, 53 Farm. And so I would be interested to see what the stance of the board was at that time, if it was done in conjunction with that permitting. But as a standard process, when we are looking at well and septic applications for new construction, we do not consider outside reports. Instead, we evaluate them based upon our own local regulations. And so that's making sure that systems are designed appropriately for the in situ conditions, making sure that the setbacks are met according to our local regulations. And within that, there is, the presumption of that's how we're going to keep things safe. As a standard, we don't look at outside evaluations for those new well and septic permits, because inherently that would mean that folks who are resourced to be able to do that would have, an advantage over folks who didn't. And that just doesn't feel fair. And so it's not that, we're being dismissive. It's a matter of process. I don't know if anyone else on the board wanted to pipe in. And so I think that
I agree with what you said. Yeah, I would just add that we're evaluating single family homes on a single lot that don't qualify for this, in accordance not only with local regulations, but largely Title V. I mean, most of the things that govern such systems are Title V requirements, and then added on a few of our local regulations. But other than that, yes.
But I guess the exception would be if we had a project that triggered an EHIR, right? And then we were getting the groundwater mounding and whatever else that was going to be part of that. If someone produced an outside report that refuted what was being submitted by an applicant, then we've never had that situation. It would be a situation the board would have to decide what to do with it, right?
Yes.
All right, any other public comments before we move on, trying to be cognizant of time? And we will forward that on, Brian and Mary.
Right.
Our
I just wanted
apologies
to
for not
point
doing
out,
it prior.
actually.
What's that?
Well, I just wanted to point out one more thing. It says this phrase, any time interval between the work or activities. So what that means is, for example, with this project, lot 3 happens, lot 4. As things move along, it's once the threshold is tripped. So applicants just need to recognize that some things may have to be revisited on earlier phases of a project once the thresholds get tripped.
But certainly not projects that were done prior to the implementation of the law. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense, right?
No.
Right. Agreed. That's not what we're.
But even with this criteria, it's not clear that 53 would qualify anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, 41 North Main, maybe?
Sure. Because, yeah. Yep,
Okay.
That one's going to require brain power. Our brain power is going down quickly as the night gets long.
Yes, so we may not.
I'll speak for myself.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. Anyway, there are these 2 projects, although one has been withdrawn for the moment. I'm not sure if that's going to be a permanent condition or not. And
the 31 Hunting Lane.
Yes.
The appeal has been withdrawn.
So
I
so
can't
right now
close the hearing, but it's
Hey, just real quick, if I can say something, Steve Constantine,
yeah.
I'm on a butter to 41 North Main, and I'm on the BOH, so I think it makes sense that I recuse myself from these discussions and any voting that goes on with this.
Sounds good, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and I'll suggest that you go off screen so as not to be interpreted as, sending any signals to the board. I'm not sure we're voting on anything tonight.
Elaine's back in.
Okay. So 41 North Main is still proceeding, but the applicants are seeking a comprehensive permit from the ZBA without having provided any details about well or septic or other aspects of the project. It's really all just conceptual. That means that we don't have much to evaluate other than pulling information from our files about past soil evaluations that I know that there were some that were done in the vicinity of where they're currently proposing the septic system for that project. So that's one thing that we need to do, is pull the files and see what the information is. And then the wells are being targeted to be a public water supply under Mass DEP, but we can still comment. We may not have jurisdiction over the operation of those wells, but the board has comments on that that might be helpful to the ZBA as they wrestle with this kind of unusual thing of how to approve something without the details. There has been a list submitted about waiver requests. Sorry, I forgot to bring that up earlier.
And if I recall, Daryl, if I can chime in I didn't attend the meeting, but I watched it asynchronously. The ZBA chair, I think looking for kind of advice from us, had requested just the briefest of bullets and memos in a memo form, responding to the waiver request for 41 North Main. And so there are two waiver requests. There was kind of an updated and then a supplemental related to Board of Health regulations. I think we were gonna, oh gosh, it's getting late, as quickly as possible, maybe just kind of zoom through. But while you're pulling that up, Daryl, and I think it doesn't have to be exclusive to any kind of bulleted comments on those waivers. I think they're just looking for any type of guidance, highlights, things to call out. I think, Daryl, you're working on potentially pulling those up. But
yes, it looks like I didn't download them, or they
Okay.
weren't in the batch of what I downloaded. So I need to go find that online.
Do you want me to try to pull them up, or I had something not.
Yeah, if you have them handy, otherwise I can just go to the town website and get them.
Well, maybe while you're doing that, I have no visual. And so I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about nitrogen loading, but you.
Okay, go ahead and I'll keep looking. I think I put them in a separate folder. So again, this was not part of the waivers, but we may want to put this in kind of a bulleted quick memo to the ZBA just to kind of flag it to them. So looking at the site plan for 41 North Main, they have gross square footage of, I'm going to throw numbers out here, guys. And I've written it down, 315,778 square feet. That's equivalent to, we're going to say roughly 7.9 Title 5 acres. So we're working with 7.9 Title 5 acres for this particular lot. Looking at the very scant diagram of the septic system, it says shared, implying that the existing antique building that is on the site is going to be a shared system or somehow incorporated with the project. And reviewing the assessor's records, that's currently a 10-bedroom dwelling. I believe it's 2 or 3 apartments, but 10 bedrooms. And so the project as proposed is 56 bedrooms. And if we add in the 10, we're looking at 66 bedrooms of flow, which would come out to 7,260 GPD. And so looking at loading, if they were loading at the kind of standard rate of 440 GPD per Title 5 acre, they would need 16.5 Title 5 acres, but reminder, they have about 7.9. If they were going to do a nitrogen reducing system, such as a recirculating sand filter or something approved equivalent, they could load at 550 GPD per acre, in which case they would need 13.2 Title 5 acres, in which case they're still coming up short. So this would mean that they're going to need credit land, and this would fall under Title 5 15.216. So they would have to do a facility aggregation plan. I'm going to actually just go ahead and read the criteria of credit land. They'd have to do a facility aggregation plan, and then there are requirements to nitrogen credit land that they would need to meet, and some of these will require restrictions and potential easements that I think the ZBA might want to be thinking about. So nitrogen credit land must, and I'm just going to zip through these as Daryl's pulling this up, has to be within the same nitrogen sensitive area as the facility.
It has to be within the same subdivision when both on-site systems, drinking water wells, and the SAS are being proposed. They have nitrogen credit land cannot have any man-made sources of nitrogen. So you can't have wastewater discharges or nitrogen-based fertilizer on there. You cannot raise or keep animals. The credit land has to be pervious. It has to be outside of Zone A's velocity zones and regulatory floodways. It cannot be covered by any surface water body. I think it's funny they include ocean on there, but no surface water bodies. And it cannot already be currently designated as nitrogen credit land. And I think also importantly here, that when you have a proposed design flow of greater than 2,000 GPD, which this will, we said it was over 7,000, you cannot include the protection zone of Zone 1 of a PWS as part of that credit land. So there's certainly contiguous land that is in the same ownership to this property, but they're definitely going to have to use some of this as credit land in order to have to not have a nitrogen loading issue. So that's I will write that up for our memo, but I don't know if anybody else had any comments on the nitrogen loading issue. Otherwise, we can go to the waivers, Daryl.
Sounds good. So, what you talked about. Yeah. All right. So here's the waiver list that has been submitted. I don't know how we want to, without reading all of this out loud, we could zoom in. Basically, here's the rough information about what they're proposing. 28 units. Rental units, although they do have different, this I've been finding a little. 28 rental units and 60 garden style apartment units. I think that may be obsolete.
It's a modification
28.
from the 60 to the 28.
Yeah. Oh, modification. Thank you. I was missing that word. All right. They want the separation to wetlands to be less than what we currently have in the regulations. We often defer to Conservation Commission on these kinds of topics, so I don't know how people feel about that on the board, on whether we would do that in this case as well. Any thoughts?
I think we should, I think we would generally, particularly in these cases, defer to Concom. That's my 2 cents.
The property line issue, the tough one, the closer a leaching area is to the property line, the more it might impede things that adjacent property owner might want to do on their own property, because of then the setback requirements that would apply to them that are being asked to be waived for this project.
But they would still have to meet the Title V of 10.
Yeah. But those setbacks are more challenging when you also have to consider water supply, right? So Title V is established for minimum conditions. That could be there's only one septic system out of 1,000 homes in a community, and everyone's on municipal water. That's what Title V is aiming at, is what are the least stringent circumstances, and then it's up to localities, as stated in the regulations, to then adjust to accommodate what their conditions are, whether it's, shallow depth to bedrock or sandy soils, as the Cape has to deal with. impacts of saltwater intrusion, all the rest. So it just depends after that.
It's
But
for,
that's a tough one without
you'll
knowing
see.
exactly what the distances are that they're asking for. Is it 1 foot closer or something different?
Tom Trainer has, I suspect this is the kind of thing we don't hit people as we're going. Tom,
yes,
might you
absolutely.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. Setback. Are you going to bring up by any chance the site plan? When you look at that, I'd ask you to keep that in mind when you're looking at a waiver like that. Julie mentioned 7260 gallons per day leach field. The site plan, I think it's showing the edge of the leach field like 10 or 20 feet from the abutter, which is the restaurant. And I would hazard a guess that the nitrate would be well in excess of 10 milligrams per liter, 10 or 20 feet underground away from that huge leach field. And moreover, I hope your board is aware that that adjacent property has a public well, and this leach field sits squarely in the interim wellhead protection area of that public well. So just want to make sure you look into that to protect that abutter.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Both good points. We are definitely acutely aware of the PWS right next door. Daryl, I think we're on to the exemption from the VOC non-detect.
Yes, well, this one's an interesting one. If they are strictly going for a public water supply, it's going to go before Mass DEP for this, unless there's some sort of interim step they're looking to take. But I don't know what reason that would be, given where they're headed for the size of the project at the moment. So I think this is almost a moot point. But do we address it anyway in the event that they have reason to want to address this? I'm just questioning whether we want to spend time discussing it now versus another time.
It's so hard when we have so few details.
Yeah. All right. I'll discuss this. I think the simple answer is we have many wells in town that get tested in this way, and that if an issue is found, we're looking to clear it, because it's not always the case that it's an artifact from drilling. Often is, but there, and particularly in the downtown area, has a history of VOC contamination, and it could be a residual from the releases that happened many years ago. We don't know if those have all degraded, migrated outside of town, or whether pockets are still there. So I think that if for some reason they were coming to us for the permit for the well, it's not necessarily unnecessary time, expense, and wasteful pumping. And also, we always request that the water be reinfiltrated back into the ground. So it's not, you are using energy, it is taking time, there is expense associated, there's fuel used to run the pumps. So there are those sides, but the risks are there. And if you don't confirm that it is a drilling artifact, trying to purge and clean that out then the reason we have the non-detect is so people are aware that it is present. And the warning sign, because if it's coming under our regulations, the initial test is our one chance to have attention be brought to contamination that might be present and might be moving and changing over time. Otherwise, we're not going to see this issue if they go the public water supply route fully with Mass DOT.
I think we can reduce that down into 2 short bullets. The first being, this doesn't apply if they could do a PWS.
Yeah. They don't specify what they're looking for here. I'm not sure.
Yeah, in terms of the bedroom, I don't know what they're asking, yeah.
I think that'll go through the standard, maybe that's the comment to make, is it'll go through the standard process of evaluating bedrooms. And I think this is the last one, has to do with the EHIR. My personal opinion is that for the reasons Tom just mentioned, certainly, in terms of potentially significant impact on the various wells, and there are a lot of wells downtown, more so than in other areas. So trying to get a handle on what the impact of this could be is going to be important.
I agree. And some of this, there's within Title V, we can require groundwater mounding. And so, but yes, I wouldn't support this waiver. Agreed. I think we can also reduce that down pretty briefly.
Mm-hmm.
For the Diana and Rebecca, we're trying to tick through, so please just speak up if you have other thoughts. So there was a second because they had a supplemental, which we just went through. They also had an updated list of waivers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was, I'm sorry, I believe it's uploaded as a second PDF. Or I'm sorry, I don't know if you're pulling it from the folder.
I don't know how
I'm pulling it from the website. I can't remember.
Yep, here it is. Okay. Is there something in particular since these are
it's
just scroll through? I mean, zoning.
I don't think, yeah, I'm just trying to read through because I haven't gotten to really. Yeah,
some that
location, it doesn't look like that's gonna apply. Number of wells, yeah. Again, it would be PWS.
And frankly, it's changed since this was done.
Right.
Now they're looking to do septic systems rather than the on-site wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, this had been uploaded as, I think, an updated list of waivers. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Okay, so it looks like that supplemental list is where we have most of our bulleted comments. And then I would like to just make some brief comments about the nitrogen loading and the facility aggregation in credit land. And does anyone else have any kind of highlights, key points, flags to raise to the ZBA?
It's really wet there. It's going to be a big challenge. I don't know how to solve it. I think an on-site wastewater system might be a benefit, because I don't know how we can comply with the regs under all these circumstances.
Actually, there is another point I can think of. They have a road proposed for going over the septic system. And that's just inviting premature damage to the septic system. Not to mention, if the groundwater is, I have a recollection of something like 3.5 feet to groundwater being determined somewhere at that property. Don't hold me to that number, but if that is the case, they're going to need to build a mound even to comply with Title V. And then also have a driveway going over that just seems awkward, difficult. They're going to compress the edges of the mound without some, I'm not sure how one stabilizes something. And Mark, I don't know if you've seen septic systems with roadways over them elsewhere, especially one that's going to get fairly heavy use. It's not just an occasional pass over.
It's definitely not recommended because the septic system cannot aerate properly to allow for digestion of the sewage. So not recommended. When it comes to the loading of the weight over the septic system, that can be obviously engineered. But again, the issue is really how that septic system works with the transevaporation that is part of a septic system function, which is usually through the grass that's over the system.
So that doesn't sound good.
No.
I would not recommend putting driveways over septic systems.
This is the kind of project where I think they should do the calculations first and then decide the number of units based on what you can actually do safely, because otherwise we're just going to be fighting to protect the drinking water, and it's impossible. I mean, it's just a really tricky spot for a big project like this.
You have an additional comment?
I do. Thanks a lot. And just echoing some of the things you brought up already, and I have attended the ZBA hearings on this project, and the Groundwater Protection Committee was really shocked that what we're hearing during those meetings, and what little important information the applicant was willing to share with the ZBA or the regulatory boards like yours. And in addition, what you've already mentioned, just again, the size of the septic, the nitrogen loading, and your board already has some information. It's posted in the remanded 41 North Main folder on the town website. You have the location of the proposed location and dimensions of the approximate dimensions of the leach field. You have the flows as Julie laid out earlier. You have the requirements under Title V, and you have actually in that web folder, there is some older dated percolation test, I believe, or test pit information, soils information. So there's some things that you have limited in scope that you can take a look at. And finally, and Daryl, I believe you were on that last CBA hearing. Julie, I can't remember if you were on it, But I thought, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, or listen to the recording, refresh all our memories. I thought the ZBA, in addition to asking you to look at that waiver list, also asked your board to, come up with a list of things that you're concerned with the amount of information or lack thereof that you have at the present time, so that they, you have to stand in their shoes to, share with them what your current concerns are, like the mounding, like the compression from a road. And by the way, one last thing, and then I'll shut up because it's 10 o'clock. If you've got a mounded system, they're also talking about changing the or positioning the road in a specific space on that property to match the intersection or the new intersection that they want to place with a I don't know, a 4-way or 5-way light, because you got the elementary school traffic, you have Everett Street, you have 2 directions on North Main Street, and you have the two-lane access road on the property. It's a 2-lane. It's not a single lane. The driveway, it's a 2-lane driveway, given the number of apartments that has to be served as a entry and exit point. So that's really going to complicate the road and intersection. And if you're adding a mounded septic system under that road, I'm not a civil engineer, but it looks challenging to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think for all of us on the board, none of us are civil engineers, and we all actually agree we'll be impressed to see it. It looks very challenging. Daryl, I'm gonna
my
shoo us
degree
along.
is.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to shoo us along. Do you have a further comment?
I don't think so, but if anyone has a hot topic that they want to mention now, other than our standard and some of the things that we've talked about, a lot fall under the EHIR. Concern for water supply, whether it's under our jurisdiction or not, to me would be one of those things that, since there are no formal plans, there's no guarantee of how they're going to approach that water supply. They could choose to put in individual wells all over and only supply less than 25 people. So I think it's probably worth having some kind of commentary in there about that. And I think other than our usual cast of characters of concerns, the septic, a lot of which is covered by the EHIR for detecting our concerns. Oh, and if they, anyway, yeah. Then the next question is, they're interested in getting that as soon as possible, preferably by the end of this week. Busy week.
This week?
I did not quite think of that. Yeah, that was their original request. The meeting is not until, I'd have to pull up my calendar. I can't remember. It's later in November. 19th rings a bell, but I'd have to look.
Let's see if we can get it out to them next week with luck.
Yeah.
Do we need to authorize folks to draft this, or
I think so, because if we don't want to have to hold a special meeting, unless people would prefer to hold a special meeting to go over a draft.
No.
Okay, I'm not seeing like enthusiasm for that concept. So, I'm happy to pull from past documents on this particular property. I also do want to go look at the past data of that. So there's facts in there about where has groundwater been found in that corner of the property. So I'm happy to try to do brief bulleted lists. They were okay with that. And then if they have more questions about any of those particular topics, the agreement was that they would come back to us. Loose agreement.
All right, Daryl, I am willing to kind of work with you and kind of trying to get that drafted up. I think whatever form we can get it to them, that it's coherent and still timely.
Actually, what you had on nitrogen loading would be wonderful. If you can contribute that, I will take on the some of the other topics, particularly on the waiver list and background information from the files.
Yeah, especially the testing. Okay. Yep. And I think we'll make sure they get a digestible version, and if need be, we can give them an appendix of further information. I don't think they want lots of calculations in front of them.
Okay.
Okay. We can do that.
Was that a motion?
Oh, good question. Thanks, Diana. Thank you for keeping us honest. So do we have a motion to authorize the chair and the vice chair to draft a memo to the ZBA regarding 41 North Main waiver requests and other areas of concern relative to well and septic?
So moved.
Could you send us a copy? Could you find a way to distribute it that is appropriate, that so that we could, if we have any input, we could contribute it?
So that's tricky.
No,
That's a good
not
question.
outside of-
We can't, outside of open meeting, we could bring it to the board for our next meeting. We could circulate it there and then discuss it in open meeting. I think the question is, when do they need it by? Can we?
Yeah, because I think it's wonderful of you to offer to do that, and thank you. I just find it really important, and it would be great if the timing works out, that there's a proper way for us to contribute, in case, I'm sure you're not going to leave anything out because you guys are very thorough, but it would just be important, or I would appreciate it.
How about
if possible?
Here's an option. This doesn't have to be the final version. So how about we produce it, send it out to all the board at the same time that we send it to the ZBA, and then review it. And if it needs updating, we could address that at our next meeting, which might be before, I guess now I should open up my calendar and see when that next meeting is of theirs. So
that'd be great.
Then everyone would have a chance. If you say, wow, that wasn't what I would have thought, we can talk about it at the next meeting. And just say we're revising it and providing you a new one.
Daryl, I have a date. It's Tuesday the 26th.
Of November?
But I think they need time to review of November.
Yeah.
Yep. The 26th of November is their next, is the continuance of the 41 North Main hearing.
Yeah.
I think that they would like ideally at least a week.
Right.
In which case, the 20th, our next meeting is too late.
Yeah, I think that, because if we get them most of it, and then if we need to send a revision, we send a revision, and we could do it in a way that highlights the change section, so they don't need to reread everything again. They can go right to the change sections, something like that. It'll streamline it for them, and it would give everyone on the board a chance to weigh in, but still meet the ZBA's request for having it sooner than later.
I think that'd be great if it's okay with the rest of the board.
What do you think, Diana?
Yeah, I would be happy to have more input. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and I love it when people edit. All right, I think we had a motion. We need a second. All right.
Second.
Rebecca,
I'll-
second. Okay, roll call. Steve's not participating, so I will start. Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. Okay,
Cheryl, can I tackle the, we had the, amendments to the agenda? Yep, can I tackle that one?
oh, yes,
I
absolutely.
think we're almost there. Okay, let's see. Today witness soil testing was scheduled at 0 Washington Street with Shared Services on site acting as the board's agent. Unfortunately, Shared Services had a last minute change and was not able to be there. Thanks to efforts on the part of our TA, Jeremy Marset and Chris Canny, we were able to get Paul Sanier on site at the last minute so that the scheduled witness testing could move forward today. As a note, Paul Sanier is a retired engineer and a certified soil evaluator, and he has worked in town for many years. So why don't we do a motion in a second, and then if there's discussion, so that way we have a clear idea of what we're talking about. So can I get a motion to ratify the appointment of Paul? I'm sorry, let me back up before I finish the motion. So as chair and vice chair, Daryl and I agreed to having Paul act as our agent in the moment, and so as a board, we're looking to ratify that decision. So can I have a motion to ratify the appointment of Paul Sanier to serve as the board's agent for witnessed soil testing at 0 Washington Street?
So moved.
Second. Can I ask how this evolved? Why did we need another agent?
Wait a minute.
I missed something.
It was Shared Services that was going to be on site. At the last minute, they were not able to do so. And so we had an applicant, it was Bob, on site with his diggers, and we wanted to try to honor the testing since he had people on site. And so we needed to find someone that was experienced and was a certified soil evaluator. And so through networks and contacts, we were able to find someone who could come out right then and there. And so this is basically having Paul act as our agent in this particular case just for the witness soil testing at 0 Washington.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, let's do roll call.
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. Okay. We have review of meeting minutes. I have that we hadn't yet approved the July 17th of the ones that are done. There's some that have not yet been prepared. So July 17th, September 18th, and October 16th. Personally, I'm not ready with October 16th. I felt I needed to do a lot more work on those.
Can you repeat those dates, Daryl, that you just cited?
July 17th, September 18th, and October 18th. And then ones that have yet to be prepared at all, as best I can tell, are September 4th and October 2nd.
September 4th, and you said October 2nd.
Yeah. I will note that the minutes clerk who we used in the interim between administrators is willing to do minutes again. They did a nice job. So I will be sending, that just got resolved this week, I will be sending links to the meetings so that that person can prepare the additional minutes. So has anyone else had, again, I've looked at 1016, but I just felt there was a lot of content I wanted to see in there. But I had a chance to review the July 17th and the September 18th and had submitted comments a while ago. I don't remember when, sometime in October, early October, mid-October. Or do we want to put this in another meeting?
Daryl, I'm going to correct you here. I'm going to the town website. Sorry. I'm going to the town website. The minutes from July 17th have been posted to the town site. So I'm going to assume that means that we voted on them. So can we strike July 17th from your list?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And what it looks like we need is September 4th. I'm sorry, what minutes that are not posted, but this is just not posted. It doesn't mean we've voted. This is what I can easily access right now. September 4th, basically all of September and October. And I'm afraid I don't have it in front of me. I didn't get to that today.
Yeah, we do have the September 18th minutes. They were distributed. I hope they were distributed to everybody, or they were in the minutes folder.
Okay.
And also the 16th, October 16th. We did receive that, but they were aired that same night or something, so they were not.
They're in a first draft
They
form.
did not have as many details. I just wanted to add some
They're in
details
first
of our discussions.
Yeah, we'll call that first draft. I'm sorry, I can't remember what I had submitted edits to.
Okay.
All
right. So if we're not ready to vote, then let's hold off.
But if other people have, if other people have submitted then, or have kept track of this, then go ahead.
Yeah, it's hard to remember, and we haven't had a chance yet to look through to see if people had sent in comments. So, all right. So I'll ask Jean to maybe help with that, because it wouldn't be appropriate for me to look at comments.
Yeah.
And it's violation of open meeting law, which is why when we do our comments, we just send them to the administrator who then handles it. So we'll,
but Daryl,
I'll check on that.
I think that's what we are hoping for the minutes clerk to basically do is any submitted edits that had been previously submitted for her to incorporate those so that we can, if we hadn't voted, then we can vote.
Yeah.
And then for her to draft any either undrafted or maybe first, I'm going to call it first draft minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess
there may be something ready to go on the laptop. We just have to find that out.
Yeah, we just haven't gotten to that. All right.
Okay, and
So
agenda
if
items
to help us keep track of what minutes we've moved, we would certainly appreciate that in your notes if anyone has time to go back and help straighten us out.
All right, anything, we had an agenda item identified earlier this meeting.
93 Goulding West.
Yeah.
Continue that.
Yes.
And we're getting into the end of November. Mark, you had previously noted that we usually are setting our meeting schedule for 2025.
Yes.
We should not leave that to late December.
I agree.
does anyone,
Okay.
since we're all kind of pinch hitting on that, does anyone want to go through and look at the 1st and 3rd of the months with, exclusion of July and August? We usually just do one and then plan a special meeting as needed. Does anybody want to go and kind of put those dates together and see if conflicts with holidays and stuff like that? We had a conflict in June with Juneteenth last year, or this year, it's still this year.
We will have a conflict on January 1st.
Oh, fun.
That's a good start.
That's a great start.
Wait, nothing says Happy New Year like a Board of Health meeting,
Oh my God.
but it is a holiday.
All right. Is there anyone on the board who would be interested in pulling together a draft of dates that we can then kind of review and go through?
I could do that.
That would be much appreciated.
Yay!
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll add that to next week. And Mark, do you know if we have any variance hearings coming up for?
I believe we have one variance hearing, and it's 105 North Main Street, I believe. I can double check. It's a repair septic system.
Okay.
Can we add a subject of the Groundwater Protection Committee's report to the Board of Health? In the last few weeks, they sent out a report. I'd love to have that on the agenda to discuss.
Sure.
Okay.
Did the full board get that?
We could check on their availability also, just in terms of which meeting, like the next one or some other one this year.
And I'm still interested in maybe an executive session, or at least a discussion of like the process that we'll be following now in the finding a replacement for the administrator, and then in the future, maybe a process that's more transparent for the first 6 months probationary period, so the whole board is apprised of how things are going. I think that might have a value. I've never seen a policy, and I don't know if there is a procedure that is typically followed, but it might be worthwhile to discuss it. And then, of course, if there's any, it might be worthwhile to have an executive session, because I personally was really surprised that it would get to a point of a resignation when the board, at least my understanding was that it was a highly educated, successful, you guys are very enthusiastic, things seemed to be fine, and then all of a sudden this letter came out. So I thought that might be some value in having an executive session to discuss, how, what took place in the last 6 months.
So the two things I hear are hiring procedures and processes, just reviewing and outlining how we do that.
Yeah.
And then the second part is, and this is more of a town policy, I think, is how is the probation period handled for new staff?
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
just,
So
I mean,
think
as
we
a
can go
member of
back to town, whatever the town policies and procedures are, and I think that's a great recommendation to see how that works.
And then the second thing is maybe an executive session, a quick executive session, just for us to hear more information.
I'm not sure that meets the requirements of executive session. I can't list all the requirements of executive session. How about we can check?
Right, we'll have to
check to make sure that meets the requirements for what justification for executive session. Is that, am I capturing your question?
Yeah, I don't have any idea what the requirements are. I just know that personnel discussions usually are under executive session. That's the only thing I know.
Okay. I'm sure there will be more things that come before us between now and then. Shall we move to adjourn? I think we've covered everything.
I think
All right.
I'm ready.
All right. Can we have a motion?
I'll move to adjourn.
So moved?
Seconded.
Discussion? All right, Steve.
Pete Constantine, aye?
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol
Thank you,
Beardsley, aye.
everybody. Good night. Sleep well.